third and final chapter of the Trittico Lombardo, the Lombard triptych, as we get ready for the big one, the Giro di Lombardia, coming up at the weekend. As it's been throughout this period of racing, the weather is not anything like autumnal. It's beautiful, it's sunny, it's very, very warm out in the roads of northern Italy, and we've been going for about an hour and 40 minutes. I can tell you that the break has just established. It's been ridden at around 43 kilometres per hour so far. A few riders already done their job and dropping out the back, as you can see there. That looked like Stefano Oldani crossing the line. We'll do our best to keep you up to date with everything that's happened in a minute. First of all, I'm Rob Hatch. Alongside me is Matt Stevens, and today it's the 102nd edition of Tre Valli Varesine. 197 kilometres. We'll be showing you the parkour in a minute, but Matt, lovely to be here again. Brilliant to be alongside you. I know you are off to Italy yourself tomorrow to savour the delights of the next few days racing, but here we're going to have a good one today. We've got quite the start list again, Matt.
We have an enormously hilly parkour. It is a rather serrated crocodile tooth parkour today, but as you said, we've got a stellar lineup. It's another, it's of course it's more than Pog v Rog, but it is a bit of Pog v Rog as well, isn't it? Tadej Pogacar, the winner last year, is back. Primož Roglic is here with an exceptionally strong team. Of course, they're resting Wout van Aert, who won yesterday in a race that I watched and you commentated on, Rob. But no, it's a very deep field. Again, it appears that this particular race and the races leading into Lombardia, the final monument of the year, are just packed. I mean, Soudal Quickstep bringing a good team. It looks like there's a little bit. Julien Alaphilippe looks to be riding a little bit better. We shall see. Interesting tactics played out yesterday in Coppa Bernocchi, but that was a completely different parkour. This one, very hard. We've got interesting lap formation, isn't it? Essentially, after an hour's running, we're currently on these circuits, 13 kilometre times 8, and then two bigger loops at the end, 2 laps of 25 kilometres. But multiple ascents today, a real hilly parkour, and it always does provide us with an exciting finale, especially with the sort of riders we've got here. We've got aggressive riders, riders who probably want to try and go clear, won't want to try and finish in a group, but all eyes are going to be, I think, on 2 men, and that's just the way it's been for pretty much the entire season.
Well, just to remind you, so far in the Trittico Lombardo, the 3 races that are organised by the same people, that are lumped together really in a triptych of races. We had the Coppa Agostoni last week that you and I watched together. That was victory for Davide Formolo. Yesterday, as you briefly referred to, it was the Coppa Bernocchi just down the road in Legnano. That was won by Wout van Aert. Today, the third and final race, well up for grabs. But as Matt was just saying, Tadej Pogacar, defending champion, is here. Former winner Primož Roglic is in town as well, and plenty of other racers having a look at things as they build towards the weekend. It's possibly the penultimate race in the career of Thibaut Pinot. Have to wait to see if he turns up on Thursday. And well, for some, this is the final tune-up for Saturday in the Giro di Lombardia. Others will ride in Piemonte on Thursday. 197 Ks here, and as you were saying, it's 10 laps roughly, isn't it, this race, after the opening hour or so. 2 different loops, 8 short laps, 2 long laps. They begin with 50 kilometres to go. So we're looking at the finish line at the moment. We were hoping rather enthusiastically to bring you images from the start. I gather that they will be on the way in a moment or so.
Yeah, gorgeous day though, isn't it? So again, it's about 26, 27 degrees, and from what I did, as you alluded to at the top, Rob, I'm off to commentate on the ground for Gran Piemonte and then in Lombardia on Saturday. And as you do when you get the opportunity to travel, a bit of long-range forecasting, and it looks as if this high pressure is set to stay. So we're going to be in for a very warm edition of Lombardia over the weekend. It's going to be about 26, 27 degrees and sunshine in Bergamo on Saturday. But yeah, unseasonably beautiful conditions, but I don't think any of the riders will be complaining, or the spectators either. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's exactly the same. I'm very lucky where I'm sat in Spain at the moment. We're getting a very, very warm Indian summer into the 30s. Great weather, bike riding, certainly unseasonable for this time of year. And I know, understandably, there'll be people who are worried about that, as we all are long term. In terms of the short term, though, you're out there on the road, you're going to enjoy it if you're riding your bike, obviously. And we're going to enjoy the views when it comes to the Giro di Lombardia at the weekend. And we wait to see who's going to be in form as we get there, going towards it. Well, with the absence of any start images at the minute, what I will do is bring you up to date with what's happening on the road. And there's a breakaway that's taken, well, a good 45 kilometres before anybody was able to break free after many persistent attacks. We had 2 big climbs before that. And then there was a group of 8 or 9 riders that was aware they only had 30 seconds for the next half an hour or so. It was a ferocious, frantic chase behind. And from what I'm being informed, the information that I'm able to get without having seen it myself on the pictures yet, we have roughly 8 riders away. They are Samuele Battistella, Remy Rochas, Francesco Busato, Gonzalo Serrano, Eric Feta, Alessio Martinelli, Gianluca Brambilla, who's been in the top 10 in this race before, alongside young Walter Calzoni. Still chasing at around half a minute back at the minute. Ewan Costiu, that will bring another team into things. And then Nathanael Tesfazion, who's in good form yesterday. Kevin Vermark and Matteo Verce are all there but at 2 minutes. It looks and sounds like a more difficult chase for them. The latest gap we had from the 8 riders up the road to the chasing peloton was 5 minutes 11, and controlling things early on. No surprise to see Jumbo-Visma, although you get the feeling they will get some help at some point from UAE Emirates. That's the situation. We expect it to be a tough race today. And of course, when Pogacar's in town, you always know that it might even be tougher than it otherwise could be as well.
Definitely. Well, the way that UAE Team Emirates and indeed Jumbo-Visma set about the racing just a couple of days ago, and there's been so much racing. I'm just thumbing back through my through my notebook, Rob, in the Giro della Emilia. It was an exciting race, but both Jumbo-Visma and UAE Team Emirates were the teams that essentially shaped the race in terms of controlling, dictating the pace behind. Slightly different parkour today. The back end of Emilia pretty much looks like the whole of the day's profile in Tre Valli Varesine. We're about halfway round, roughly, the end. Well, we're coming towards the end of lap number 3, so it might actually be, before we actually start our live pictures from out on the road, we see them roll through the finish line, because the circuits are relatively short. As I said before, around 13 kilometres per lap. Multiply that by 8, so 8 smaller laps before we do another figure of 8 loop. The finishing circuit is essentially a figure of 8, where we take in the 2 climbs in Casino on Montello on the big finishing circuit, with the addition of a couple of other climbs as well. So a lot of races generally have a big circuit, then smaller ones. This one is the other way round. Looks like this is the forward flotilla on our screens now here, Rob, doesn't it? I don't think it'll be too long before we see the leaders of the race passing through.
Oh, we look forward to seeing that in just a moment's time. We're still trying to get you images from the start and live images. We'll do our best to find out what's going on there. We were promised that we'd have an extra hour and 10 minutes of coverage. We were actually supposed to be coming to you from 3 p.m. local time. Yesterday we were informed that we're getting an extra hour and 10 minutes. We are going to get a look at the breakaway here, so let's see if we can confirm exactly what's happening. This is the head of the race then. Coming to the end of the 3rd lap, as you were saying. Does look to be the riders who we were talking about.
Yep.
In fact, there are 7 riders there. There's one out the back who's obviously chasing on. May well have been dropped. Has he been back to the car? And that looks like it's Battistella to me.
Yeah, maybe tailed off, as you say, had a little bit of an issue. That's certainly on his own there. And it is a big gap, but let's say not the place to be if you're in between. That interesting little group of Tesfazion, Vermark and Verce is in between as well at 2 minutes. And the bunch, from the information that we're getting, just over 5 minutes behind still. No information on who's going to be chasing or setting the tempo, but one would imagine it will be a combination of the men in white and the men in yellow and black, the 2 big teams that have dominated the cycling landscape for the last year or so. But yes, that group are well clear here, Rob. A yawning chasm of a gap.
Hello everybody and a very welcome to the 102nd edition of Tre Valli Varesine. They're turning up from across Italy and all over the world to race one of the best start lists we've seen in professional cycling this year. The last big tune-up before the Giro di Lombardia. Certainly the race where the most of the big favourites are going to be present. Minus maybe Remco Evenepoel, who's off preparing in Belgium. More of that as the afternoon goes on. Matt Stevens is with me, Rob Hatch, as we look at what happened at sign-in this morning. On our way to Varese today. That is when you can find your name to sign in. Lotto Destiny here. Andreas Kron, fresh from his stage win at the Vuelta a España. And Intermarché, fresh from the news that Hilaire van der Sure has announced that he'll stop DSing from now on, the veteran. Ilocometa here, Israel Premier Tech with a new DS in their car. More of that as the afternoon goes on as well. Jakob Fuglsang is on the road for them, as is Domenico Pozzovivo and Rigoberto Urán back for another campaign for the Autumn Classics. Up against a Peter Sagan-less Total Energy, Sagan who retired from professional road cycling at the weekend. And look at this for a lineup. Healy's here, Chavez, Urán, and of course Carapaz. It's a mightily strong lineup for EF Education Easy Post. All the rumours of Amazon to Jumbo. Alexa, tell me where Primož Roglič might be riding next year. Well, he's riding here for Jumbo-Visma. We just saw a team in green that's highly rumoured to be his destination for next year. Lidl Trek was one of the teams in the conversation. They've already got a packed, brilliant roster for next year, as was Movistar. Not quite sure what's happening with them, but they do have a team looking to try and take something from this race. As you'd say, going to have a few retirements at the end of this year. But a strong team here, led by Ben O'Connor, Felix Gall and Benoit Kuznefroy. Ineos Grenadiers are racing today, absent yesterday. They bring a really strong team, the British team. Carlos Rodriguez is back. Tiemann Arensman. Sivakov continues his fantastic autumn. And Julien Alaphilippe is just about getting to the level he might want to be at. It's been a difficult few days for Soudal Quick-Step, a shock to the system, I'm sure, for many. More rumours this morning, but there is a certainty here. Thibaut Pinot will leave professional cycling on Saturday. Another big race for him in a land he loves. Simon Yates again leads Jaco Alula, a team that were in fine form at the weekend, and Yates recovered from his crash well enough to finish third in Emilia. Up now against Alpecin de Koenig. Now one of the teams without any huge favourites here. Talking of favourites though, here he is, smiling, ready to go again. Played 1-1-1. In one-day races this year, Primož Roglič racing for Jumbo-Visma. And it's not the only Slovenian. Tadej Pogačar, the national champion of Slovenia here for UAE Emirates, defending champion and ready to go for the weekend, trying to make it a hat-trick of victories in the Tour of Lombard.
Che porterà nel cuore, come tutti noi. Applausi per lui! E l'applauso sale in cielo da Paolo.
Giving him a very special memento to take away. If he wants to win the race, this is what he will have to take on again this year. Starting in Busto Arsizio, just down the road from Malpensa Airport in Lombardy, north of Milan, and heading up into the three valleys of Varese. Varese, of course, both city and province. It's around 45 kilometres before we get to our first loop. And 8 laps of what is denominated the short loop to be taken on. Climbs on each of them. Once you get to the final 50 kilometres, we go on long laps. Some of the same roads, but a little further out into the countryside. Along the lake, climbing again, and 2 of those laps as we come to the grand finale. And the finish in Varese after 196.5 kilometers.
L'altimetria molto impegnativa di questa edizione 2023 della Tre Valli Varesine. Queste sono le immagini della partenza, splendida partenza.
This was the scene at kilometre zero. Davide Formolo victorious in the first of our Trittico Lombardo events. Yesterday in Coppa Bernocchi, the second of those events was won by Wout van Aert. He doesn't race today, but his teammate Primož Roglic comes into the Jumbo team as the pre-race favourite. This was the first tranche of attacks. Tobias Bayer was in it for Alpecin Koenig. Kevin Vermaat was trying to be up there for DSM. None of them would imagine that it would take 50 to 60 kilometres or so for things to settle down. And with the elevation to take on, it wasn't fast in terms of numbers. It was about 42, 43 kilometres per hour at the start. We've seen it faster, of course, but there was plenty of climbing in the opening 50 k's or so. Eventually, 8 riders got up the road. I can tell you that the last time we looked at it, they were down to 7. And Northern Italy, as is often the case, was a real picture postcard at the start of the race. So that's where we've been. This is where we are. We're approaching the 90th kilometre of racing of the 196. And this is the situation. For some, this is the final tune-up for Saturday. Others will ride in Piemonte on Thursday. You're watching live coverage now of the 102nd Tre Valli Varesine from northern Italy. And after a ferocious fight over the first 50 kilometres, these are the 8 riders who've made it into the day's breakaway. I can tell you they are Rémi Rochas in the red and white, Frenchman racing for Cofidis. Alongside him for Intermarché, it's an Italian, Francesco Busato. There are 3 other Italians in the breakaway. Alessio Martinelli, who is racing in the green project livery. He's alongside Gianluca Brambilla and Walter Calzoni, both of the Q36.5 team. Eric Vetter's there, the Hungarian in the blue from Eolo Cometa, a team that has an Italian registration despite having a beating Spanish heart. And talking of all things Spanish, Movistar up the road today with Gonzalo Serrano. So then, we also have 3 chasers. Nathaniel Tesfazion, Kevin Vermaak and Matteo Vercel. And we're told of one other rider in between, Ewan Kostju, at 45 seconds still. There are 108 kilometres still remaining. Plenty of these short-denominated laps still to go, Matt Stevens. And plenty of aggressive racing, I'm sure, to come. We're yet to get a look at the peloton, but we're told that it's Jumbo and UAE who are bossing things.
Yeah, they built up a decent lead, considering the fact that it took over an hour. It was just about an hour and 5 minutes before the elastic finally snapped, should I say. But it's quite a relatively flat start, the first 30k, with a bit of drag before they entered the circuits. They started the circuits after 42k's, but if the gap that we're getting is correct, they built up a decent lead. And there we go, it's come down a little bit now, just on cue there, 3 minutes and 57 seconds. It did max out as much as 5 minutes any level, or Group 2, sorry, or 3:57. They were at 2 minutes. They're actually falling away now. So Group 2 at just over 4 minutes. And you do wonder, Rob, on a circuit like this, given the bunch behind, what the purpose of this move is now for Tesfazion, Vermaak and Matteo Vercel. They're very good riders, Tesfazion and Vermaak in particular, very capable. Especially when you look at the lineups for both of their respective teams, you think they'd be better recruited and better used elsewhere. And there it is, still 5 minutes to this group out in front. 8 riders on a circuit like this, it's a good average speed. It's going to take a while to bring this back. Even the combined might of UE Team Emirates and Jumbo-Visma, this break, just given that gap, are not going to be caught for the best part of an hour and a half, for sure. That just isn't going to happen. So this is an interesting one. I'm surprised that gap has gone out so much.
It's a good collection of riders as well. And we're not talking world beaters, and I'm sure none of the riders in the breakaway would be offended by us saying that, but we're talking good, solid professionals, some who have won some of the biggest races out there. Gianluca Brambilla has done it, of course, in Grand Tours before. He's worn the leader's jersey of the Giro d'Italia. Walter Calzoni is a young up-and-coming rider who I know that Q36.5 are very excited about. Battistella, well, he's done it on the world stage, hasn't he, at the under-23s, Yorkshire. Under-23 world champion, although he had to wait about half an hour to find out that he was the world champion, if I remember rightly, with all the things that happened there at the front. There's Rochas, who's being a solid rider, and Gonzalo Serrano, one of those sort of second-level Spanish pros who often gets a result or two. Of course, he won the truncated Tour of Britain last year, didn't he, after it finished early with the death of Queen Elizabeth. A winner this year of the Grand Prix de Wallonie. He's a man who knows how to win a bike race or two, is Gonzalo Serrano. Eric Vetter, a good young rider from Hungary. And yes, these riders are strong behind, particularly, you'd say, Tesfazion. Manu's lived in Italy on and off for a long time as well. He's raced for Italian teams, raced an Italian calendar for most of his career until he moved up to the World Tour this year, Tesfazion. He's based down in San Marino nowadays. So, of course, not strictly Italy, but I'm sure a lot of his training is done beyond the borders of the very small state in central Italy.
Yeah, it's just looking at some of the riders you talked about. Battistella, Bussato as well as an interesting rider. Will love this sort of terrain. It's his first year riding at World Tour, but as a winner, former winner of the under-23 Liège-Bastogne-Liège, you know. So that when you start to drill down, you talked about Brambilla, Calzoni, Martinelli, Vetter as well, and Serrano, who took that Wallonia race, perfectly timed sprint, and of course beaten the likes of Tom Pidcock back when he won that truncated Tour of Britain, took a stage win on the way as well. He is a rider who you won't see much of for a while, then suddenly bursts to the fore and grabs a pretty big result over this sort of parcours. So we're not looking at the sort of break who might actually struggle on this sort of terrain. Most of the riders in this move can climb over punchy terrain, and they're doing it really well. But importantly, as well as their capability over this sort of parcours, is the fact that it's a big break. 8 riders, so they can work well as a unit. There's plenty, or relatively speaking, plenty of opportunity to recover. And since we've been talking about them, still, you know, triple digits in terms of kilometres to go. 5 minutes and 9 seconds. That's still a pretty healthy lead. They are going to be difficult to bring back, but to counter that, we do have a lot of firepower behind. We've still got a lot of teams interested in getting involved in the racing. And of course, this is one of those sorts of circuits, because we are racing primarily on circuits today. It's one of my favourite circuits out there. It will start to wear these riders down. That was a close call. I think we can put that off as a near miss there. I must admit, to go on a slight tangent, over the last few days, there's been a lot of racing that we've had here on GCN Plus, Eurosport. So many pedestrians legging it across the last minute, every single race. I don't know what it is. Maybe there's been a strange shaped moon or something. I don't know, that's had an effect on local residents where there's bike races. Anyway, that always gives us something to talk about. But no, Rob, a good lead, a very interesting breakaway, but importantly, we're not talking about a break of 4 or 5 riders who've got no hope at all. This one, I think, is going to go pretty deep into this race.
It's the temperatures, Matt. There must be a pool party or a barbecue on across the road. Grigliata. We just got a real good close glimpse of Walter Calzoni there, and he's a home rider. He's from Lombard, he's from Brescia. Had a really good first professional year. Just 22 years of age. He's only turned 22 actually last month. As an amateur, he won a stage of the Tour of Małopolska over in Poland. Very good sort of semi-pro race. And this year, early on, second in the GC in the Tour de Rwanda, which is a race that continues to grow in stature as we get ever close to Rwanda hosting the World Championships. It's becoming the top stage race in Africa at the moment. So keep your eye on Calzoni. Strong engine to have in the breakaway, and already a couple of good top 10 results recently. 8th in the Memorial Pantani down in Romagna, and 6th at Coppa Sabatini in Peccioli. Very, very solid rider for a Q36.5 team that have started to settle nicely into the way they're racing. And, of course, no big pressure with huge GC leaders or anything like that. They are allowed to attack things, and must be a nice positive image and a nice way that they can race. A bit of a freedom without too much pressure on the team.
Yeah, whenever you get a newly formed team, depending on the sort of riders you get there, when you look at this squad, there's a lot of experience, and also it's a real blend of youth and experience. Some riders that have ridden at the top level, but there's a lot of the riders here are given a newfound freedom, as you say, a newfound role. There's not the pressure of leadership quite as much. So the riders are quite clearly, from what I've seen so far and where they've demonstrated from their first races. Remember, they won very early on this year, Q76.5, which is important. And they won back in Spain in a I can't remember the name of the race, but they did.
Classic
they did take
Almeria,
a race.
wasn't it?
That's it. Yeah, they took that, and they've had several wins this year so far. But what I've enjoyed about this team is the liberated way in which they're riding. Pretty much every single race, they are protagonistas. They're getting up early, but it's not just it's not just for television time, but they are mixing it in with the races, and they've got the sort of riders that can be there in the finale as well. And they're finding their own identity, and I think it's fair to say they've had a pretty solid opening season. And most of the riders that signed up for this new team have got 2-year contracts as well, so there's a degree of security there, which is enormously important. So I think they're a fun team to watch, and I think they're punched actually way above their weight.
And the man from Madrid at the front, Gonzalo Serrano, racing for Movistar. A lot of talk in the Spanish press at the minute about uncertainty as to who will be riding for Movistar, but I guess with everything that's going on off the bike and in the press, they'll just say, well, welcome to the club. Isn't every team like this at the minute? And there are a lot of teams where it's all up in the air. I know that some of you will be completely fed up with us mentioning it, but it is the news story of the day. And by the way, you can check out everything that's going on in the news on and off the bike as we get our first look at the peloton, by the way. And all you have to do is go to globalcyclingnetwork.com, globalcyclingnetwork.com, our brand new website, where our editor-in-chief Dan Benson is all over everything. So, in the chasing group, things have changed. It's not Jumbo-Visma. Of course, they won yesterday, and they are not doing the work. It's UAE Emirates who are riding. They're being helped by Israel Premier Tech, just sitting on the wheel at the moment. UAE Emirates, who have Vegard Stokkelong, and they're doing the work at the front today. Very dependable Norwegian rider.
It is. I thought Jumbo would be riding, but when you look at their success that they've had so far, do they really need to ride? How hungry are they? I'm sure they are, but they're clearly leaving it to some other teams to do the riding at the moment as we head through the finish line again. They are lapping pretty quickly on this 13-kilometre circuit. But no, interesting to see that we've got Israel Premier Tech riding, but they do have an exceptionally strong squad here. Their three leaders, one would imagine, Dylan Tierns, Stevie Williams and Michael Woods. Michael Woods, of course, finishing strongly the other day in the Giro dell'Emilia. I think it's fifth place in that race, the Canadian. And will like a finishing circuit like this. He said that race was one of the hardest of the year. No, they have an exceptionally strong team. But they weren't the team that would have initially sprung to mind in terms of doing the chasing so early on. But again, another lap's passed by, Rob. The gap went down to 5, it's back up to 5 minutes and 3 seconds. I think you're going to need a couple of other teams on the front for the reason that I said. There's 8 riders here, still relatively fresh, and although we've got this race is just under 200 Ks, these riders are more than capable of riding at a pretty decent tempo. You're going to need riders at the front to chase this rather than do this holding pattern. The longer this holding pattern goes on, which is what we're seeing right now, the bigger chance this group has of causing us a little bit of a surprise. I think it's certainly not an impossibility. Had it been just 4, 5, 6 riders, you would have said their chances are slim. But 8 riders with a 5-minute lead, they've got a reasonable chance here. So I'm wondering when Jumbo-Visma might join the party. But we've got around 2.5 hours of racing still to come. There is plenty of time, but given the fact that we've got an opportunity to see this race for a lot longer, we can see how the way that evolves and the politics within the peloton, the brinkmanship within the peloton, and also the dynamics on who's going to take up the race. And it could be that Jumbo-Visma just want to sit back a little bit, because every single race we see that they're a part of, they generally do shape the race. And maybe today they're just saying, hey, do you know what, guys, if you want to win this one or be in with a shout, we're not going to do it all. And that's what we might have seen just here.
The Albo d'Oro palmarès, roll of honour, as we'd say in English. Tadej Pogacar, the last winner. Alessandro De Marchi, a fantastic victory the year before that. There was no race in 2020 because of the pandemic. Primož Roglič won in 2019. Tom Squinch is a winner here. Another podium place for him, by the way, down the years as well. He's not racing today, the man from Lidl-Trek, but Alexandre Geniez won in 2017. Sonny Colbrelli the year before that. We've got a couple of other riders here who've been on the podium previously, Matt. I noticed in my research for this race that Diego Ulissi, well, of course Diego Ulissi's been on the podium, an Italian one-day race. Which race hasn't he been on the podium of? He was second to Colbrelli there in 2016. Saw the victory by Alessandro De Marchi in 2021. Well, Davide Formolo, our winner the other day at the Giro delle Brianze, Coppa Agostoni. He was second to De Marchi, was Formolo the other year. And Sergio Higuita, remember him? Racing for Bora Hansgrohe today, at least on paper. Sort of missing in action, you have to say, this year, Matt. No, I mean, he was second last year. I always felt he's a fantastically entertaining rider to watch. I'm sort of mourning his absence as a neutral observer from the pointy end of things this year. And whatever's not going right for him, in terms of general entertainment terms, it would be nice for things to go right for him again. It
is interesting. I'm just scrolling through his results, Rob. This season, well, save for the save. I'm just having a little look. Yeah, it's save for a win. He took a stage win in the Tour de Basque Country, but since then has almost been absent, as you say, by his own lofty standards. He's almost flatlined. And normally I'd have highlighted him in a pink or a yellow pen for this race, but I haven't today, just based on his form. Not the fact that he's a classy bike rider. It's just the fact that over the last few months we haven't really seen anything from him to suggest that he might be in at the kill at the end of this race, although he's got some very handy teammates with him. The Bora Hansgrohe squad is a strong one. Jai Hindley is here, the German champion Emanuele Buchmann, Higuita, Lenit Kemner, Konrad Lipowitz and Alexander Vlasov. So despite the fact that Higuita doesn't appear to be on form, the rest of his teammates have, including Vlasov. Vlasov looked good the other day, just dropped away in the finale when we finished in Bologna, of course, in Emilia. But no, the rest of the Bora Hansgrohe team, very strong indeed.
Well, you're getting a look at what will be the finish at the end of today's race, with 100 kilometres still to go. Just a little more for the three you're watching on your screen. 4 minutes and 49 seconds from the leaders at the minute. And as it stands, still rolling through, still riding, but continuing to drift back to the peloton. At the moment led by Vegard Starkelongen of UAE Emirates. Just under a century to go then in the 102nd edition of Tre Valli Varesina. 99 kilometres remain. Peloton coming across at just over 5 minutes. There's a group of 3 riders around 20 seconds in front of them. And 8 riders continue to lead this final big classic. Midweek semi-classic, you'd have to say, on the way to the Giro di Lombardia. More racing coming off on Thursday from Italy. The final tune-up for anybody who feels they need it, racing in Gran Piemonte. For a lot of the leaders, today will be the last day of racing before we get to Lombardy itself on Saturday. Now, while the race is like this, there's a little bit of news just coming up from the UCI, Matt, at the moment. And I think it's pretty important, given everything that's happening, that we just mention it. We're talking about this possible merger, absorption, fusion, maybe one team just ceasing to exist. We're not quite sure, despite the letter of intent that was broadcast by Patrick Lefevre the other day, how it's going to take shape if it does happen. We're talking about Jumbo-Visma and Soudal Quick-Step, but the UCI has put out a press release in the last 15 minutes and they've made their own first and what they say will be final statement regarding to the media speculation and the information going on at the moment. And basically, just having read it whilst you were going through a few of the riders' strengths and what have you a moment ago, they are reinforcing what they believe, that if one of the teams does not continue next year, there will be a 17-team world tour for the 2024 and 2025 seasons. That is how they see it happening. They say as a result, a number of UCI Pro teams that are automatically invited to the UCI World Tour events would then increase in accordance with the provisions of Article 2.1, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to give out the actual article of the UCI regulations. They then say that there'll be the usual registration process, there'll be the usual registration deadlines, of course, October, mid-October being one of those. Then PricewaterhouseCoopers, the team that helps them assess all the information, will assess the registration procedure as they do each and every year. Same for both the men's and women's World Tour licenses. And following this press release, the registration procedure will continue without any communication on its progress until the issue of the final press release announcing the teams registered for the 2024 season, and its publication is scheduled for the 12th of December 2023. It finishes with one sentence. The full list of teams will be published on the UCI website on the 19th of December. So, as we see the three riders who are out there being reabsorbed by the peloton, it seems that any absorption of one team of the other, we'll find out from the teams themselves rather than the UCI now.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one, really. It's quite important. I thought it was going to say something else in relation to honouring the contracts of riders who are going to be left out in the cold, quite possibly. And again, I know there's been a few people on social media, understandably actually saying they're kind of fed up with it. But actually, if you really care about the landscape of this sport and the staff and the riders in the teams who we are fans of, who we appreciate, who we respect, who've got families to support, we need some clarity sooner rather than later. And the UCI, of course, govern what's been going on, and what they don't want to get involved in is anything that's ambiguous. They just need to give some clarity, and they have on this particular occasion, just in relation to the World Tour side of things. But I think a lot of people are interested in the futures of riders and staff who might be left out in the cold. You've got two teams merging, approximately 60 riders there. Times three when you look at all the members of staff involved, but ultimately if there's one entity left, that's going to leave a lot of people out in the cold, which will have a ripple effect to the rest of pro teams and of course World Tour teams. But that is an interesting one, that nobody's going to fill the void for the next couple of years. Does that mean then that three teams will be promoted? I would imagine it has to be, to get it back up to the number. So two teams, will it be one team going down? Interesting. They didn't talk about that, but anyway, we could go on. I'm sure on the GCN News show they will pick up the threads of that one and discuss the whys and wherefores of what the future looks like from a technical perspective. But I think the riders and staff want clarity too. There's clearly some riders that aren't going to have a problem at all, that their futures will be secured just by their elevated status. But I think, for me, it was Julian Alaphilippe's comments off the back, I think it was before, maybe after the race yesterday, where he let out Baggioli. Baggioli finished, I think, in third place in the end, so a reasonable result for Soudal Quickstep. He said it's sad. And I think I think we have to look at, sometimes this does happen in sport, sometimes there are mergers. It doesn't happen particularly often, but it does happen from time to time. But I think it's just this nebulous, rather parlous state of affairs that we find ourselves in, where a lot of people are left in a state of flux, and to concentrate on what you do for a living is very hard, when it could mean that you're out in the cold. And the longer this goes on, and the more teams that fill up their places for 2024, 2025, the harder it is for some of the riders on the margins to possibly race next year. So I think that I'm sure that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but from what I do know, it looks to be extraordinarily complex.
Yeah, the UCI talking about that. They make it hard for us to explain this sport sometimes.
They do.
Valli Varesine, one of the most interesting midweek races of the whole season. And what a start this we have. Pogacar and Roglic headlining it, but so many more names involved. Hoping to get a good look at the peloton to open a few storylines as we go into the final 95 kilometres here. Storyline so far is that these 8 riders, the ones that got away, I can tell you that we have 12 riders were up the road at some point today. 4 have now been retaken, and it's a 5-minute gap, or 4:58 to be exact, for the 8 riders on your screen. They are Samuele Battistella, Remy Rochas, Francesco Busato, Gonzalo Serrano, Eric Vetter, Alessio Martinelli, Gianluca Brambilla and Walter Calzoni, who are up the road. There are 4 nationalities represented. You've got Italy, Spain, Hungary and France. 7 different teams represented. 7 out of the 25 teams on the start list are up the road. And mainly UAE Emirates. And just looking at this, Israel just seem to be sitting behind Vega Starkelong. And it looks to me, Matt, not sure if you've seen anything different, but Vega Starkelong, strong as he is the only man controlling this at the moment.
Yeah, I made the wrong and incorrect assumption, didn't I, that we're going to get some work from Israel Primožák. I'm sure that they're not just sat there to block.
Well, I think we'll get it at some point, won't we?
Yeah, well, I think it clearly... Domestiques, super domestiques, domestiques deluxe, or whatever you want to call it. There are some of these riders that would just be put on the front early on to set a tempo, to basically put a lid on the riders out in front. Because there's a real difference between riding at the same pace as a breakaway of 8 and actually then going faster than them. Because this is a strong group, as we've talked about ad infinitum, really. There's no doubt about the prowess, the strength of that group out in front. It's very hard for one man on their own to actually eat into the lead, but what they can do for the best part of a couple of hours perhaps, or an hour and a half, is to maintain the same speed. So what we'd call now is basically Vegard Langen has put a lid on this. It's not going out any further. The next phase of racing, as we see, I think that's that's the shark of Messina, isn't it? It's a shark attack. There we go. That's obviously a couple of years back. What year would this be?
2015, 2014.
2015. That would have been the year he went on to win in Lombardia in that very same jersey. Yeah.
Sergei Firsonov in second place, Giacomo Nizzolo in third. So just shows what an interesting race this can be when you've got a Grand Tour winner and a sprinter on the same podium.
Well, just looking back, just to continue on that particular subject,
Please
just looking
do.
back at just on the subject of the way this race does unfold. Although it's a hilly one, the hills aren't super steep. They're kind of 5-6%. There's a couple of other pitches, so the climbs are very different to what we saw a couple of days ago, and indeed to what we're going to see on Saturday in the Lombardia. So the climbs are nothing like the ferocity of the finishing climb to San Luca in Emilia. They're slightly more draggy. And last year, Tadej Pogacar won this race, not alone or from a group of 2 or 3. He won it from a group of 20. and I've just gone through the start list. Save for Alejandro Valverde, every single one of the top 10 are still there. Higuita was second, Valverde, one of his last races, was third, Pierre Latour fourth, Benoit Cosnefroy fifth, Adam Yates sixth, Bauke Mollema seventh, incredibly Domenico Pozzovivo eighth, he's back again, Harada there for Cofidis, and Aran in 10th, and actually I think Rudy Mollard is also here as well. He is, so the top 11, bar the man that's now retired, all back in the mix. But it was a 20-man group sprint, so it has a different dynamic. It's a different sort of race than the ones we've seen already this year, and it has its own clear identity where we could get a reasonable sized group going to the finish.
A man on the left here, Gianluca Brambilla, as we look at Sonny Colbrelli's victory a year later in 2016. By the way, these images are coming from the host broadcasters in Italy, so we're not quite sure when we're going to see them. We'll do our best to reference them. But man on the left there, Brambilla, there was a time in his career where he would have gobbled up these climbs, wouldn't he?
Totally, yeah.
Right up his street, this sort of parkour.
No, definitely. I remember back in the Giro d'Italia that you've already touched on, where he won a stage and moved himself into the Maglia Rosa. It was a brutally hilly stage. I was there. I was on the ground, and I remember it well because I think me and Dan Lloyd rode the finishing circuit and did a little recon video for GCN back then, but a lot of it was on gravel. It was one of the first times, save for Strada Bianca, that the Giro had started to insert gravel stages in. It happened a couple of times before, but he won on this Dorato, attacked from a breakaway, and went into the jersey.
It finished, didn't it?
That's it, Arezzo, yeah. I remember having a lovely glass of wine, actually, in a beautiful little side street cafe like you do. I must admit, I'm looking forward to going back to Italy tomorrow. But no, he is an exceptionally capable rider. He's got a couple of years deal with Q36.5, and this year, I wouldn't say it's been a resurgent Brambilla, but he's been back. He's been there or thereabouts, and he needs to race smart these days. If you're a rider that potentially got your best years behind you, but you're coming back, what you do have, you might not have the same punch and the strength, but what you have is craft, and that's something that as you get older, as you almost start to flatline in terms of condition. I'm not saying the condition drops away enormously, but what you have is experience and intelligence to race with.
Gab at 4 minutes 52. Vegard Stokkelongen of Norway and UAE Team Emirates really become an important domestique in that team. Mr. Dependable, riding on the front on flat and on varied terrain. He'll ride for as long as he can today, and when you look elsewhere in the team, each and every one of the other riders really are potential winners on their own day. Many will be domestics, I think, for Tadej Pogacar today, but it's a fantastic squad. Stokkelongen to control for now. For later on, they've got Jay Vine, Diego Lisi second in this race previously, Davide Formolo second in this race previously, Rafał Majka, been up there in Grand Tours, King of the Mountains at the Tour, several times stage winner. There's Adam Yates on the podium of the Tour de France this year, having led the race for a while and won a stage in the Basque Country. And the main man himself, Tadej Pogacar, defending champion in this very race. Not a bad squad, is it?
It's not bad at all. Really is. There's no slack at all. I mean, several teams have got now real strength in depth here as well. It's the Jaco Alula. I mean, they've got, as well as Simon Yates, they've got Michael Matthews, who was just up there in the bunch sprint behind the breakaway yesterday. This is a sort of course that could suit Michael Matthews, you know. It could be a Yates day, it could be a Matthews day. It is an interesting parkour. They've got Filippo Zana as well. So watch out for team at Jaco Alula as we focus on Tadej Pogacar, wearing number 1. Is loyal lieutenant Rafał Majka moving up to the front, and there is the ever-strong Diego Ulissi as well, but Vegard Stokkelongen, I said he's put a lid on this. He's actually just now managed to take a few seconds back. It's 4 minutes and 40 seconds, so he's doing a good job here. A real uncomplicated task in terms of this is what we need you to do. I've said it before, there's a beautiful simplicity to what Vegard Stokkelongen is doing at the moment. But I tell you what, it might be simple. It's like, okay, you've got to ride at this pace. But I tell you what, it's hard. It's very, very hard. A big calorific day out for Vegard Stokkelongen. And so far, he's doing a good job. 88.8 Ks to go. A nice symmetrical number there. 4:39. So doing a pretty solid job right now.
That's 4 times 22.2, isn't it, Matt?
It is indeed. I believe that's one of your favourite set of digits.
It is. You might have noticed by now. Certainly our Australian viewers will have noticed. And I gather that you're watching us live all over the world today, so wherever you're watching, whatever time it is, welcome along. Check your territory restrictions for races later this week, but I have a good feeling that Giro di Lombardia can be seen throughout most of our territories at the week as well. So a very, very good viewing experience and opportunity to join us from wherever you're watching this week.
There was a cracking viewing experience just a few hundred metres ago, just on the apex of that corner as we came into that roundabout. There was a little cafe just on the corner, and there was a couple of chaps with the chairs turned around watching the race. Absolutely classic. And great, you can see the race every 15 minutes on this circuit as well, so that's what I'd be doing. I'd be getting a nice glass of Chianti and sitting and watching the race.
Channeling rather the experience of the man who inspired me certainly to do what we do, or one of them, James Richardson. When I was watching the Italian football on the telly when I was little, he'd be there with an espresso and an ice cream, Pink newspaper with him. Those were the days, eh? But yeah, fantastic place to watch this race. And the long laps come through the same roads as well. It's just add a little bit on. So 25-kilometre long laps when we come to 50Ks to go. A couple of these laps, shorter laps still to go on to get through the finish line again. By the way, talked about Giro di Lombardia at the weekend. Whichever of the GCN Plus or Discovery Plus territories you are watching, you will be able to join us for the Giro di Lombardia at the weekend. The final monument of the season, there are no territory restrictions. So very good news to all of you. You'll be with us from start to finish as well. It's 10 a.m. Central European time, I have a feeling, to start at the weekend, all the way through to the finish. I can tell you as well, if you'd like to watch the final warm-up with us, Gran Piemonte on Thursday. No territory restrictions for that. That should be around the final 90 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah, another Piemonte is always an interesting race as well. A race with its own identity. Quite a flat start, a hilly finale, but not really hilly enough to split it to bits. But again, you generally get a slightly reduced peloton coming to the finish there. Can suit a breakaway, but again, it is an interesting race. It straddles the point where you get some of the punchers and the mixed climbers there too, and some of the sprinters who can climb reasonably well are in the mix in that one as well. So Piemonte, a Wout van Aert sort of stage, or sort of race, should I say. And I do believe that Van Aert is going to start that one before he does the World Gravel Championships at the weekend. So opting not to ride in Lombardia. And I do believe you can see the Gravel World Championships on GCN Plus as well. We've got so much racing, although we're deep into the season now. So much racing for you all to enjoy and watch, of course, on Catch Up too.
Just to finish on that point, good mate and colleague Dan Lloyd tells me that the only races that we're showing this week with any territory restrictions are Paris Tour. You'll be able to watch that in Europe, Asia Pacific, excluding, however, Japan, China or New Zealand, as well as the Exact Cross in Bering at the weekend. You want to watch that worldwide, unless, of course, you find yourselves in Belgium. A mix of the old and the new, particularly in this part of Italy. Just the industrial beating heart up here in the north. Being at school actually and being taught about the industrial triangle. Milan, Turin, Genoa. The economic miracle of Italy in the last half a century. That was back in the 1990s when I was learning that. Those things have moved on, and unfortunately Italy in many cases for the worse at the moment. Of course, when we go down south, everything does have that bit more old and tradition and nature about it, but up here in the north, it's much more of a mixture of old and new. And you see those old fantastic villas and then the new blocks of flats and factories, and it's a right mix around here. But the natural beauty is on show as well. And you'll see plenty of that as we race from Como to Bergamo at the weekend.
Well, if any fans of the sport, of course, if you're watching this, you will be a fan of the sport. If you cast your mind back to the 1980s, and especially the 1990s, and think about the teams, the amount of pro teams that Italy had across all three divisions, or two divisions back in the 1990s. Think about the jersey design. A lot of the money for Italian cycling, apart from the cycling brands, came from the industrial north. And a lot of the jerseys, the patchwork style of the jerseys, because there was various different manufacturers and organisations that would co-sponsor the team. A team might have 5 or 6 sponsors scattered all over the jerseys.
8 riders at the front, 4:43, racing in and around Varese. If you have been to Milan, we're just to the northwest. They well have arrived at Malpensa Airport, which is the biggest of the international airports in the region. Just in these foothills here, some great views as you land and take off. And some of these old stately homes, look at that in the gardens. That's an area around here as well, very well known, particularly to Australian elite sports people. So if you're an Australian Olympian, whatever sport you're in, whether it be cycling, rowing, running, you may well have spent a lot of time down here at a place called Gavirate, which is just down the road. So you look at the Parco di Villa Panza. Yeah, you've got rowing venues on Lake Varese, and Australian rowing team used to come here and spend time at the European training base. A lot of cyclists have been there as well. Basketball too. Australia, one of the big world nations in basketball nowadays, and Italy has one of the top European leagues in that. Has plenty of teams that play in the European Cup and various European Cups after there was a bit of a schism in basketball in the last couple of years. Volleyball as well. Busto Arsizio, he started today, for a long time had one of the best women's volleyball teams in the whole of the continent, actually. They were European champions on a couple of occasions. So this is a very big sporting area. You see up the Hippodrome, up onto the top of that picture there. I gather you've been to the Australian Institute of Sport's big facility around here, Matt, before on a visit.
Yeah, it's right on the shores of one of the big lakes. It's absolutely gorgeous. I flew in a couple of years ago and did one of my cafe rides that for Sigma with Simon Yates, and we went on a ride around. He took us on some of his training roads, but the location that you're talking about doubles up as the service course for that what was then Mitchelton Scott. Now, of course, it's the same team, but now branded Jayco Alula. So they're based there. And Simon Yates often spent a lot of time there, based with the team. That's where all the infrastructure was, all the kit. That's what they'd have all their training camps too. And I tell you what lovely training roads. He took me on some really interesting little loops. We got lost at one point actually, but there was a few of the roads that I remember from my racing days at this neck of the woods as well. As we see a first little counter-attack. Okay, the racing is kicking off a little bit here.
And it looks as though Elo Cometa and DSM want to follow this. The gap at 4:34 still. But EF Education Easy Post have a packed roster today. I mean, we were talking about UAE Emirates, maybe Jumbo-Visma, but Carapaz, Chavez, Healy, Honoré, Piccolo, Quinn, Uran. At different points in the season, every single one of those riders is a team leader.
Indeed. Well, if you think about Piccolo in particular as well, not the name that you think would be the leader, but I believe he only lives about 16 k's from the finish here, so he's a right local as well. So I don't know who that was. We only saw the aerial shot, but you're quite right, Rob. EF Education Easy Post have it's an A team. It really, really is. They've got some brilliant domestiques and 3 or 4 riders there that you wouldn't be surprised if they managed to take the win here. And the man on form, I think, is definitely Carapaz and Ben Healy from what we've seen so far. So I think they'll both be their protected leaders. So they are a team with clear options. Jumbo
are getting involved as well now. You've got Formolo on the chase here. Jumbo had their Hungarian national champion. This is Sean Quinn, by the way, for the United States. Formolo following in the black and white. A rider there for DSM, looked like it was Chris Hamilton. Cofidis are in the chase here. Interesting to see whether this continues or calms down. The Jumbo rider, as I said, was their national champion of Hungary, Attila Walter. Just on the climb here. These narrow roads, so easy to be out of sight very, very quickly. But it's interesting that happened there, Matt, given the fact that the gap was still 4 minutes and 30 seconds at that point.
You do wonder, I mean, certainly, given the situation, we've still got a long way to go, best part of 50 miles, as you can see, 82 k's. Whether, I mean, that certainly wouldn't, at this stage of the race, just been given, because they've got 2 potential winners here, let's be honest, EF Education Easy Post. They're not going to do anything reckless. I think that's come from the team car. I might be wrong. It's just, all right, we need to try something here. This gap's not coming down enough. Let's be a little bit disruptive. Let's put some of the other teams on the back foot and let's try something. So it's not what I would have expected, but in this day and age, we've come to expect the unexpected in terms of tactics, haven't we? So it does actually, although it was a surprise, when you think about it, no, it wasn't. Why not start things off a little bit earlier? And they're going again.
They have recent form for this as well. Think back to Luxembourg last week, the days when Ben Healy was up the road. There were several attacks both that day and the couple of days after when he'd lost the jersey as well. Magnus caught, by own admission, on his last legs at the end of the season, but giving everything for his team, attacking and attacking and attacking, basically until he couldn't pedal anymore. A couple of other riders tried it as well, but keep your eye there. And Sean Quinn, the only rider from the United States on the United States team today, giving it a very good go. Interesting to see what that does to the breakaway, if anything. Will the message come through, or will the message, if there's a message coming through here, Matt, be just to carry on?
Yeah, I think with the moment they've still got a very comfortable lead as we just safely negotiate that little traffic island with some very welcome padding on it. This group, the gap's still so large that I think they just got to continue riding on as deep as they can, because they've built this lead up. They've got a good chance of staying away pretty deep into this race, as I said before. Attila Valter trying to maybe establish a little bit more control. Trek, or Lidl Trek, also getting involved here. And just step away from what's happening at the front here and just look at this course. Look at what we've seen so far. We've seen the climbs on numerous occasions. We haven't got any 1.5 Ks at 10% stuff to split this up. Because the gradients are only relatively benign on these climbs, although they're repetitious and of course will sap strength, it's relatively easy, or easier, to sit in the wheels. This race has a different sort of feel, so it isn't necessarily going to go down to who's the strongest man here. Clearly you'll need good legs, but look over the last few years at the way this race has finished. Generally a big group, and what you don't want to do is play into the hands of the team with real strength in depth. You don't want to let teams that traditionally control the racing on a course like this control it. Mix it up, start early, get other teams involved, and what you're doing then, you're taking back a little bit of control of the race, opening things up again to race with numbers, and it's good to see, actually, because the last thing you want to do really is play into the hands of the likes of Primož Roglič or indeed Tadej Pogačar. So why not open things up early, cause a little bit of chaos and see what happens, because this race is far more open in terms of possible race winners than, let's say, a Lombardia or even a Giro dell'Emilia. This is a lot, the parcours far more hard, grippy, but more open.
Emanuel Buchmann was the latest attacker at the front, the German champion. Looks as though that latest move was brought back, but it's certainly chopped off a good half a minute of the advantage that happened there. There's a little bit of a let-up here. That might invite another attack. We've got Chris Nealons at the front for Israel Premier Tech. And it looks as though DSM wanted to get interested here. Romain Bardet making sure he's close to the front. Ben Swift on the right-hand side, alongside Ben Turner, who, by the way, was the Ineos rider who'd been monitoring that initial move from Sean Quinn. Most teams were represented in the move, just not everybody happy with the composition of it. We see Esteban Chavez for EF Education, easy push moving up. Romain Grégoire, left-hand side. And the gap's just going to grow a little again while we have this nervous but not exactly big chase on. But having a look at the climb here then, you talked about the gradients. It's 3.8% average, this climb up through Varese, 7.2% maximum, lasts for 3.1 Ks, starting at 264 metres above sea level, going up to 382 metres, which in this part of the world isn't too high at all, really.
No. There's still a lot of accumulated elevation, but there's nothing particularly steep. And as you can see, although it's grippy, it's hard, riders will be getting tired, there's still a decent benefit of sitting in the slipstream here.
.5 kilometres remain in the 102nd edition of Tre Valli Varesine. The three valleys of Varese, if you like. And it's to Varese we ride after having started today in Busto Arsizio, just down the road. Home to a lot of industry, Busto Arsizio, a lot of fashion brands are from the region as well. The factories that it's sold down in the very well-to-do city of Milan, just down the road, and around the world. And riders from around the world taking on this race. This is Tobias Bayer, who's from the neighbouring country of Austria. Just on the right-hand side there, 223. Races for Lotto Destinies, Matthias Paskens. He's a veteran of many breakaways in the Belgian classics. 67 moving up to the right-hand side, Rigoberto Urán for an EF team that has already started to cause that little bit of chaos. There's Florian Lipowitz at the front, the German rider for Bora Hansgrohe. There's a rider in the mix there in the fluorescent yellow jersey of Bingol. And the pattern that had been established before, just one rider riding for UAE Team Emirates, who was Vegard Starkelongen. His day job, does it every race he races in, just controls a breakaway. That has been upset now. What's the attitude, what's the feeling in the peloton like when that happens and it's unexpected?
I think a lot of riders will be up for it because it makes the racing go a little bit quicker as well, to be honest with you. Otherwise it can be quite, I wouldn't say dull, you're just ticking over the kilometres, and it wakes you up because what you've got to remember is this is a bike race, and earlier and we're seeing things open up a lot earlier than previous years. I think the key word, or the buzzword in pro cycling now amongst commentators, amongst journalists, pundits or whatever, people who speak and write about the sport is anticipating. And when you think about the definition of the word anticipate, if somebody else anticipates, well, to anticipate their anticipation, you've got to anticipate it. You've got to go earlier and earlier. So that's why we're seeing the racing open up so
it's
early.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? I think this is all at the front now, by the way.
Exactly. So it's all about, getting your hand in early. Racing is getting faster and faster because races are opening up earlier. Because if you want to win bike races in this modern era, you've got to think differently. You need your riders to be on it, of course you do, but it's about intelligence as well. And I think I feel privileged, and I'm sure you do, Rob, to get to talk about racing in this modern era. It's always been great. Whatever iteration of bike racing, whatever generation, it's been fascinating for multiple reasons. But right now, it's the most different that it's ever been. And speak to any bike rider racing at this level now, and they'll tell you the same. The evolution of our sport over the last 3 years, in particular, since COVID, has been exponential in the terms of elements of change. It really, really has. It's a different-looking sport. I think it's a better sport. It's a harder sport. Again, talking to the riders, especially the ones who've maybe into their 30s, late 20s, who've been around a little bit. But I think it's exciting. And that doesn't look like Ruben Thompson. It's definitely the figure of it. It's definitely Rigo, and it is. It's one of the riders from Lotto trying to get across the gap.
Go, Rigo, go. And here he is at the front. We've already seen Sean Quinn. We have now seen Rigoberto Urán. The plan is being put into action by EF Education Easy Post, who hope to deliver. In the chase, Jan Tratnik, third wheel. Always a dangerous rider. Jaco Lula involved too. This is Lotto Destiny on the wheel. Lidl Trek have made this. And is that one of the Bora jerseys towards the back? We know that Lipovic had been the man hanging around at the front, but there's a lot of washing machine stuff going on already as we get into the final 75 Ks. Another lap to be done. 2 more short laps remain. And then we move into the 2 long laps to finish up, 25 kilometres each.
Indeed. Well, given the strength of some of these teams here, this is what you want to try and do, is open up the race early, and this constant attacking, all the teams have got to try and be involved. What they don't want to do is miss out and be forced onto the back foot. But what you might get, and the benefit of racing like this, apart from just making it a little bit harder, is the fact you might get a move containing the vast majority of the key teams in this race that actually sticks. So the teams have got to be really minded. I mean, look, the likes of Michael Matthews getting himself into little moves here, sat there second wheel in the blue and the white kit. Just shows that teams are having to get involved. Looks like Lennart Kemna is also there. There's some Murray Van Seven and Davide Formolo. So there's some key riders getting involved early on. And all it takes is the right permutation of riders. You get 8 or 9 riders from all the big World Tour teams, then it's gone. And then we're looking at a different race situation. Riders that you might ordinarily think are going to get up there now have a clear option. And the dynamic of the race constantly shifts, causing DS's road captains to constantly start thinking. And this sort of, I would call this course, rather than brutally hard, I'd call it a sporting course. And quite often sporting courses open up possibilities for far more players. Far more teams can get involved, knowing there's a possibility of a good result, rather than almost being bludgeoned into submission over a really hard course. So this is a real different proposition tactically, and that's why we're seeing this early aggression.
Sacromonte di Varese on the top left of your picture. Thankfully for the riders, they don't have to climb it. This is Italian cycling country, one of many hotbeds of the sport in the country. In recent terms, this is the area from which Ivan Basso hails. Still lives just down the road. Look at what's happened to the gap with everything that's going on behind. 3.5 minutes now. This is not Ivan's house, by the way, but it's rather nice, isn't it?
Are you sure? He's done all right for himself, that lad. That's rather spectacular, isn't it? I bet they've got an absolutely corking wine cellar.
Just a bit. Brambilla doing up his shoe on the right-hand side there. This is Eric Vetter. Been the Hungarian time trial champion already in his career.
Had a good couple of days, haven't they? Second place for Albanese yesterday in their Bernocchi is a great ride.
Tratnik's on the front. This looks like it's Mühlberger, Austrian champion, on his wheel. By the way, Tratnik has told our colleagues earlier today, despite quite a few of us, I think, wondering whether he would leave the team with Primož Roglic, having joined the team to work with his good friend Primož Roglic. Both he and the team have said that he has a contract for next year. One thing is friendship, another thing is business. So
exactly.
Jan Tratnik looks to be staying for now at Jumbo-Visma for the foreseeable future. So we see Formolo again at the front. And another move looked like it might have just been going there as we cut back to the breakaway.
Yeah. Constant attacks now coming. Teams wanting to try and split this one up. Looks like that's, yeah, Yui trying to shut this one down again. Looks like that is Ben Swift on the wheel of Jay Vine, I think it is, trying to get across that gap. Vine has a look around. You'll see the figure of Swift as they pass through. Gap down to 3 minutes and 33 seconds. Unsurprisingly, the net result of these constant attacks, his little moves going clear, chipping away quite significantly now at the group out in front.
So we already had Sean Quinn. Rigoberto Urán followed it up. The third rider from EF Education Easy Post to just put his face in the wind at the front is Esteban Chavez, the Colombian national road champion. Peloton leading Varese, heading out onto the penultimate short lap before they then take on 2 long laps. Chavez is done and dusted for now, and it's another jersey that belongs to EF Education Easy Post off the front again, being followed this time by Bora Hansgrohe. 8 riders at the front. We remind you they are Rochas, Battistella, Busato, Serrano, Martinelli, Vetter, Brambilla and Calzoni. This is Rochas at the front. Red and white jersey on. It looks as though Gonzalo Serrano is going to be the first to seed.
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise, that was. So dropped out the back. This looks like it might be Piccolo, actually. I'm not too sure.
It is the style of Piccolo. You can see the hairdo coming out the back of the helmet as well. Fantastic stage early on in the Vuelta a España.
That's great, wasn't it? Really well deserved.
And on the right hand side, an opportunity to ride the Tre Valli Varesine as well. That's what happened early on this morning. And Varese really trying to promote itself in the world of cyclotourism.
Wow, look at that. What a tremendous... I mean, it's a couple of thousand there, Rob, by the looks of it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and the Gran Fondo World Series is part of that promotion. There's actually a local bike path been built all around Lake Varese. We've got a little sighting there of Stefano Garzelli, former bike rider, now colleague in the commentary box with Italian television. But yes, 28 kilometres of bike paths all around Lake Varese. You've got, of course, the plenty of different routes. They reckon there are 2,500 kilometres of mapped out routes. And here, on this particular route, they're going for it again.
Yep, Stana wanting to get involved in the action. Also Iolo Cometa too. Again, that man, Jan Tratnik, wanting to keep... rather than that, Tratnik's little moves here aren't big attacks on the other side of the road. It looks as if he's just trying to keep this all together. It's strange. Shutting things down, as you say, he's a man in great form. The work he did yesterday to set up his teammate Wout van Aert in the Coppa Bernocchi. There's a few complaints, wasn't there, or observations from, again, generally folks on the internet, which is fine, about the tactics of Soudal Quickstep, but I think they're 3 in the break against 3. But what else? If you've got Tratnik riding at the best part of 50, 55 k's an hour, what can you do when you've got a man committed? You've got Thijs Benoot. I really don't think there was a lot that anybody else in that breakaway could have done yesterday, Rob. Even to put my DS head on, and even my uber critical head, because they did try a few attacks, but the way that Tratnik was riding, no wonder they don't want to let him go. He's a rider of popular rider, likeable fellow, but so reliable, consistent, super quick and strong, and he was the key yesterday, I think, to keeping that break together.
Now this is Jay Vine. Question is, where is he? He's looking behind. Take a bead on here. Jan Tratnik was setting the pace at the front. It looked a little bit like a proxy war at points, didn't it? Because wherever Jumbo-Visma go, UAE go. Wherever UAE go, Jumbo-Visma follow. And it's now Jay Vine who's stolen a bit of the march, trying to make it difficult. And he, in turn, is forcing Jan Tratnik to continue to set that pace at the front. And what we know how good Tratnik is, you've just been singing his praises, Matt. And here he is, just winding him in as much as possible as Alaphilippe starts to move up. And
there's a split here. There's quite a big split here, Rob. You could just see the bunch did look out of focus on that little stretch. So we've got a group of about 15 riders going clear. You could just see, with understandably moved away. Jay Vine, as you say, just off the front there, waiting. Alaphilippe was impatient, just tried to move up the inside there. Healy's there too. If we just see, we zoom out, that is a split.
Another Jumbo-Visma jersey at the back of this group as well. Now, will it last? Coming up to the point where they'll come towards the end of the first part of the climb. There's that gap at the back. Another UAE jersey there as well. So 2 from UAE, 2 from Jumbo-Visma.
Well, this is what we talked about, wasn't it? Yeah, sorry to kind of cross you there, Rob. This is what we were talking about. It's just numbers, firing numbers up the road until ultimately people look around. Okay, we've got 1 guy there, we've got 2 there, we've got 3. All the big teams represented. We need a little bit of a head count here, but it might be just a little bit too big to have any real effect. Too many riders sat on. It's still clear. Well, there is the unmistakable sight of one of the most aero men in the peloton. Ben Healy swings over, the Irish road champion. Ineos Grenadiers are represented there too. G2R Citrons as well.
That's with Ben O'Connor as well. Man on form and a gifted rider, as we all very much know. And here he is, Australian from Subiaco in Perth. City founded by Italians. That district of Perth, at least. As we get 6 riders remaining now at the front. The 2 dropped are at 31 seconds. The 6 remaining: Calzoni, Brambilla, Feta, Rochas, Buzzato and Battistella. That means that Martinelli and Serrano are out the back.
Yeah, and they won't be getting back on anytime soon, because this group know that there's a lot of pressure being applied behind.
Fast pace, fast moving affair. Ridden at 44+ kilometers per hour so far. Just under 70 kilometers remain. The chase breaking things up behind. The race is all over the road right now, whether it be in the breakaway or 3 minutes behind in the chasers. Chasers looking at each other. What's left of the peloton isn't far off, and Julian Alaphilippe is giving himself a test.
Yeah, it's too big, this group, Rob. But when you've got in a split like this, and it's when things just start to come back together again, which it looks like they are. It looks like that's Pavel Sivakov just towards the front of the group there. But Alaphilippe eager as ever to try and get something from the back end of this season, but quite often the time to go, and the time when there is a there can be a little bit of a hesitation, that little bit of a lull as people reassess, look around, take a breath. That's the time to go again. But he did attack from the front, which always makes it very easy, difficult, should I say, to break the elastic. But one thing you can say about Alaphilippe, despite his slightly inconsistent form this year, is the fact that he has a never say die attitude. And that's really great to see in the mix, attacking. But that group is just a little bit too large.
Ben Turner left-hand side for Ineos Grenadiers. Pavel Sivakov a little further back. Sivakov, another of the Frenchmen, as we talk about Alaphilippe. Sivakov, a Frenchman who was born in Italy, down in San Donà di Piave, in the Veneto.
It's just Had a chat with Sivakov a little while, a few conversations with him, and turned out I'd raced with his dad back in the day. So when I was racing in Italy back in the 90s, early noughties, raced with his dad on numerous occasions.
From a good cycling family. His mother was a very talented rider as well. Both professionals, father and mother, as you see. There's not quite enough in terms of bringing this back as a group, is there? This rider's still splintering off and trying to bridge across, scared that they're going to miss the boat.
With a group that big, exactly, although it's an unwieldy group in terms of its size, just because of the size of it, what we've got there, 20 riders, easy, about 20 riders, maybe 22 riders, something like that. Now, what it does mean is that there's not going to be a lot of resource behind. We've got 3 Jumbo-Visma there, Lotto represented, UE Team Emirates, I think Movistar, I've got some Lidl Trek, some big teams in the mix here. So what does that leave behind? All it leads is confusion.
And EF Education Easy Post have Ben Healy in that group as well. This is the group at the front. With all that's happening further behind, as we've just seen, the gap continues to be reduced. Main chasers here, of course, the group 2 at the top of your screen are the riders who were dropped from the breakaway. They're no longer relevant, with all respect to them.
Yeah, this is
looking at the head of the race, this group, and those who are back in the peloton still.
Yep, 2:46, so estimate the gap to the bunch. This is group 3, as you said, Rob. The bunch would be group 4, but it's only about 5 or 10 seconds between them. But it's just a little bit too big, as we see. Didn't quite catch who that was. Another one of the riders from the front group is now dropped.
Brambilla dropped. This is Calzoni remaining.
Well, despite us singing the praises of Brambilla, that's showing that this course, although there's no real steep sections of climbing, it's just the attritional nature. There's not much flat at all. You're either going down or you're going up, and it just eats into your reserves. And ultimately, it's a very slow burn. The type of fatigue you get in a race like this, it's quite difficult to describe. It's suddenly it's like drinking too many glasses of red wine. Suddenly, you get punched in the face, and you're gone.
Is that the red wine that was back at the Castello down the road we had a look at before?
It was indeed a vintage from the cellar there, yeah.
Deary me. Oh, we're still waiting to find out if we're going to have a vintage Pinot at the weekend. Haven't seen much of him yet today. Haven't seen anything of him yet. Let's hope there's at least some fight from Thibaut Pinot as he comes to his final race on Saturday.
He's been twice second in this race, actually. Looking back over the years, twice a runner-up in this event. One of the years was when he went on to win in Lombardia itself. And what a victory that was. He took those couple of stages in the Vuelta, didn't he? Had one of the richest veins of form, I think, of his whole career. He was almost unbeatable at the back end of the season. Took 4 or 5 wins, didn't he, from September through to October.
I can tell you in this chasing group, one of the 2 UAE Team Emirates riders is Diego Ulissi, former second-place finisher here. Who's the man at the front there in the white and black? And the 5 remaining in the breakaway with a 2-minute 41 advantage of Battistella, Feta, Rochas, Calzoni and Busato. Calzoni and Busato representing the future of Italian cycling. And representing it rather well today. Now then, Alaphilippe on the march. And this is a big move. And he's chased by his compatriot Pavel Sivakov.
Yeah, good little move just at the bottom of the climb here. Sharp acceleration, still constant looking around because of the size of this group. Still clear of the peloton, but Sivakov also takes a glance, just drifts on to the wheel of Alaphilippe, that busy style of his. The bunch still haven't got back on terms here. This is a good move. As well as a strong one, it's an intelligent one. The Serrano just looks by, a spectator now. Yeah, Sivakov, of course, in great form too.
He's in the form of his career, certainly in one-day racing. It's something he'd never really had before, but he's looked in fine fettle. He, of course, is on his way to leaving Ineos Grenadiers this winter. He'll be a UAE Emirates rider next season. He's finding form at the right time. Now, what happens here for Jumbo-Visma? I'm looking down at Ben Healy in that group. There is Diego Ulissi towards the back of it as well. Israel Premier Tech have representation. And we've already seen that Ben O'Connor was in this group of around 20 riders as well. Look at the march they've stolen, though, the 2 Frenchmen, Alaphilippe and Sivakov.
That's great. Just that little bit of hesitation. You could see Sivakov just look round Again, that's just this never say die attitude again. As long as there's a moment, as long as he's feeling he's got good legs, Alaphilippe will try something. And that's why he's such a celebrated, such a respected rider. That was a good little move there. Our two friends have moved their position, actually, surprisingly, on the corner there. Perhaps gone inside the cafe to watch. But no, a good little move here. Sivakov now rolling through. Two Frenchmen clear of that group. And as you said, Rob, opening up a gap very quickly.
Of course, Matt, they know that if they miss anything, they can watch it on demand on Discovery Plus and GCN Plus.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Rob.
64 k's to go here with Sivakov and Alaphilippe, and this is their lead. Naturally, Jumbo-Visma are going to chase this one.
Yep.
They did have Tratnik in this move. He might be the man chasing here. Looks like it could be his figure, but we wait.
Yeah, well, that was
of their
interesting.
riders looking back.
Yeah, after that little surge on the front by Tratnik, it looked like it was Jay Vine who just swung across the road, not happy. I think they'd rather than drag that group across the gap, he just fired riders across. That's what I'd be looking at when I was in that group. There's only two riders out in front. What's the point of dragging it back? If you drag it back, riders go straight over the top. Try and attack and bridge across that gap rather than ride for other people. But because of these climbs, they're not being so steep, it's quite difficult to do.
Coming to the end of lap number 7. That means there is one short lap to go. That's just over 13 kilometres. Following that, 2 25-kilometre laps to take us into the final 50 kilometres. So one short lap, 2 big laps. There we go. Lap 7 of 8 of the Circuito Corto. The short lap already taken on, 1 to go. Stretch out tired legs and limbs. Eric Vetter takes them around the corner. In the centre of Varese. It's been a party all afternoon. But the big stuff is just getting going.
Yeah, gap's coming down all the time, isn't it? 2:19 now. And this is a cracking counter-attack, isn't it? 2 superstars. One in particular on the wheel there. Good to see Alaphilippe back in form, building towards the Lombardia. Happy to get stuck in. First slice of what will be the Flamme Rouge in about 62 kilometres time.
Now then, chasers. Number 6, there's Jay Vine. And alongside him is Andreas Kron. Danish rider who's got a very good finish on him. Of course, 2 finish you've got to get across. He's now being chased by Mühlberger. Ben Healy in this group as well. Aker with a rider there.
It's just eased off, isn't it? It's quite cagey behind here. This race, as I say, though it's grippy, it's very tactical. You need to snap the elastic fast, otherwise it's just too easy for the riders to sit in the wheel here. So these teams really need to think about how they ride the last part of this race. And even for the riders out in front, although the climbs are hard, and the longer they stay out in front, the more of a chance they've got of actually getting in a group that may go to the finish and just sitting in and holding on for as long as they can.
They catch Brambilla now in the chase. Of course, you all the talk there about Alaphilippe, naturally with all he's achieved, but Pavel Sivakov is 26 now, as I said, born in Italy, raised in France. To Russian parents, of course, he's naturally now taken French nationality. Of course, you hear him speak, realise that he spent most of his entire adult life, also as a kid as well, at school in France. He's a Frenchman by culture. But in Italy, where he was born, that's where he's had his best results, really. Certainly before he turned professional. He won the Under-23 Tour of Italy, the Baby Giro back in 2017. Won the Val d'Aosta Tour as well. Always a very, very good sign of who's going to be a good climber. And behind in the peloton, Lavanda chasing, we were just talking about. The peloton is all together again, save for a couple of attackers off the front. But it was in Italy that Pavel Sivakov, just to finish the point, won his first one-day race just a couple of weeks ago, and that was the Giro della Toscana. Second in Petroli the day after as well, on the podium in Romagna at the Memorial Marco Pantani too.
Of course, he was a runner-up in Quebec, wasn't he, as well? In Montreal, sorry.
Montreal,
in
yeah. Fantastic race.
Yeah, that was a cracking race, wasn't it? Second there to Adam Yates in the sprint, but no, a real rich vein of form. There you go, they've got 16 seconds over that group behind, which has now been reabsorbed by the peloton, save for there's one rider from Arkea. It looked like it was Kevin Ledenois, but I'm not too sure who's trying to get across that gap, but a reasonable advantage.
Former under-23 world champion. Richmond, Virginia. Gap growing to almost 20 seconds now for Sivakov and Alaphilippe. And 2 minutes 10 behind this group of 5 riders who remain at the front. This is the final time up this climb as a short loop, but of course this climb is included in the long loop as well, so it's not done and dusted. They have 3 more ascents of the climb to do in total.
And another chance for the man on the back of this group as well. Brambilla now just holding on for as long as he can. I wonder at what point he'll just raise the white flag. He's still there. He might actually get dragged back into contention. But the gap is opening up. Another few seconds have been taken. But saying that, there's a lot of activity at the front of the peloton, as you would expect. Bigger teams here are not going to want to let the likes of Alaphilippe and Sivakov just bridge across to that gap and open up too much of a lead. But it's fragmenting in the pursuit behind. Still lots of aggression. Also just in the mix there. Yeah, a beautiful jersey of his. Very easy to spot from high up.
Ben Healy was just ahead of him, the Irish champion as well. We've already seen that there's a desire to be active for EF Education Easy Post. It's a good pairing they have, isn't it, with Healy and Carapaz? The latter can afford to wait that little bit longer. Healy, I think, as we know now, his style of riding, he has to attack early. He has attacked early, and there's a rider with him here from Borohanskra.
Yep. Not too sure who that is right now, but as soon as he saw that he got a gap, he accelerated and has now opened things up. Get some little bit of assistance.
The rider's Alexander Vlasov as well, so 2 top bike riders out there attacking things at the front of this race. And at the very front, this lot continue doing well to hold everybody off with all of the stuff happening behind.
Yep.
Their gap keeps and continues to reduce.
It
2 main chases, the big names are here. Vlasov is now on the way. Healy just dropped off the wheel a little bit.
Bit of a surprise there. Ben Healy just losing the wheel from Alexander Vlasov. Vlasov riding strongly the other day. Was one of the riders in the mix in Emilia, but is bridging across to this group. That would be 3 strong riders out in front, but still no representation from UAE Team Emirates and Jumbo-Visma. As a break drop down the other side.
A little bit of a lump and bump halfway down, isn't there, as they're back into Varese before they drop down again and head back up into town. Sort of Varese halfway up the climb, if you like. City itself and the finish line.
Well, once we loop round and head up for this larger circuit that you were talking about, Rob, it's basically it's the small circuit with another little figure of 8 with another loop on top of it, but it's 1 lap making 25 k's. They do climb a climb called Morsolo, which is a bit steeper, 1.6 k's, but at 7.8% average. So then they do that, a couple of ascents of that climb. That is a harder one, and the last ascent of that comes 163 k's in, so still 23 k's to go, but there are 2. The 2 ascents of that climb, by far the hardest climbing of the day.
Top of the climb reached now by Sivakov, Vlasov and Alaphilippe. Vlasov has managed to get across to the 2 Frenchmen. Healy, the Irishman, has not managed it. Just starting to show the odd sign, isn't he, Alaphilippe, again, of not quite getting back to his swashbuckling best, but there's a glimpse of form around the corner maybe, and that's a very, very good bit of news for the neutral. .58 k's to go. 2 long laps, half a short lap.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Rob. You know, I think a couple of years ago when he was at his pomp, into year 2, well, second win in the World Championships, and the battles he was having with Pogacar, Van Aert, and of course Mathieu van der Poel, for example, who's just gone off the boil ever so slightly. But good to see him back. Certainly intent on making an impression in this race, and the gap's gone out now, especially with the added impetus, the pace, and the added recovery that it adds. 3 riders far better than 2, especially when it comes in the form of a rider as classy as Alexander Vlasov. Sat on the wheel there of Pavel Sivakov as Alaphilippe drops onto the wheel of the man from Bora Hansgrohe. They continue to eat into the lead of the 5 riders left out in front. Battistella, Rochas, Bussato, Feta, Calzoni. Who's going to take up the reins behind? Not the B for EF Education Easy Post right now. Ben Healy didn't quite manage to stay with the pace of Vlasov on the climb. As we head back towards our leaders, Remy Rochas, the Frenchman, for Cofidis, takes his turn on the front. Not as much recovery now. Bussato now moves through. Impressive young rider with a big future, that is for sure. Same can be said for Walter Calzoni as well. And then Battistella, as Rob was saying, former under-23 World Road Race Championship back in Yorkshire. Seems like an eternity ago now. So much has happened since then, of course. And here is the peloton. Let's have a zoom in and see. Well, there we go. That's evidence of who is chasing. The man on the front representing Jumbo-Visma. Then we've got AG2R Citroën not too far away. UAE team Emirates as well, and another big team that were at or near the head of affairs earlier and are not represented up in front is Rail Premier Tech. So that is the situation on the front. So 20 seconds is the lead now for the 3 riders that are essentially trying to bridge across the gap and forcing Jumbo-Visma to try and pursue them. Interesting situation here that's unfolded, Rob, especially with the addition of Vlasov. This is a good fighting force, isn't it? 3 key riders, 3 very dangerous riders indeed.
Yeah, Vlasov, who's never started this race before. He's been on the start list but hasn't started. Vlasov, I should say, 19th place. Sivakov has never started. Alaphilippe is on full debut himself. Never even had planned to ride this race. So he talked yesterday in the interview about discovering this race. It's not been a bad discovery so far. He's finding a leading role. Is he going to get the best Oscar at the end of the day, though? 21 seconds in the chase. 2:02 back from this group to them. 2:23 back at the minute to the main chasers. Now then, are they still working together? Has everything gone out of this? It might well have done, I don't know.
No, it's gone. I think they've, yeah, there's the group. It's too much of a pursuit behind. It's certainly less than that. No, that's about right. It certainly wasn't 21 seconds.
Just got to look at the group then. Again, in the urgency had gone, hadn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And there's still a long way to go as well. We've got the 2 ascents of the climb that we were talking about earlier on. The Morosolo, 1,600 metres at just under 8%, so a significant climb. And right now, there's no point in pursuing anything, given the fact there's still going to be a lot of relatively fresh legs, a lot of resource at the disposal of the likes of Jumbo-Visma. It's Rail Premier Tech, UAE Team Emirates. I think it's a wise move, actually, that Vlasov, Sivakov and Alaphilippe have probably sat up. And have no doubt, given what we've seen so far, they'll be eyeing other opportunities as we get deeper and deeper into this race.
End of the sharp descent is almost over. Approaching the final half-century in terms of kilometres, and 2 long laps to mix things up. I know this corner well enough by now. Almost ready for a reabsorption of Alaphilippe, of Vlasov and of Sivakov. And there'll be 1 chasing group at roughly 2 minutes. Are we ready for more moves on the climb that's about to start again?
I think so, because the first ascent of the Morosolo climb comes just as we enter the circuit, or the slightly larger circuit, should I say. So it'll be an interesting one. And that added couple of digits in terms of gradient will feel differently as well, because there's been a real rhythm to this race, that relatively flat start and then these circuits, and they'll be really bedded in, hardwired. In fact, the body will get used to the rhythm of a circuit that's around 15 minutes long. Then suddenly, and the climbs themselves, but suddenly you hit a climb that's 8%. It's a completely different proposition. But everybody be aware of that, of course. Save for the runners who haven't ridden this race before. They'll know it's coming, but they won't have ridden it. As we look at...
I think this is the year that Roglic won.
Yeah, it's another... I was wondering, it looked remarkably similar, but yes.
On the right-hand side, going back to the Roglic victory in 2019. Already stole a march there. Coming into that final couple of turns, we've seen it barriered off today. Leonardo Basso had found himself at the front of the race then. But it was yet another typical Primož Roglic killer finish. In his own style, pumping away at those pistons and able to celebrate.
Well, he's done that a lot since then, hasn't he? Something that we've become all too familiar with. Just that acceleration. You saw then the way he attacked on the right-hand side, but just that explosivity that he has, that actually arguably he's got just better at over recent years. It's from a select group at the end. Once he opens up the gap, that initial gap's so hard to close because he's able to sustain that effort. Such a dangerous rider, and quite often the best thing to do is just look the other way.
Accept your fate.
Indeed.
It looks as though fate is sorted for those breakers, as we see yet another move off the front and another stretching out. This now is a look at what I think is a couple of years ago.
It's last year,
last
I think.
year now.
Yeah.
Okay, no, apologies. These images are coming from the host broadcasters. We're not being told when they're being fed in, but yes, this is last year because Valverde's there. This is Pogačar through the front. Vlasov on the left-hand side in the green, and after 4.5 hours of racing, it was perfect.
He's got a right kick in that lad, isn't he, as well? It's a long sprint that was as well, wasn't it? Very long sprint. You forget. We don't often see it, do we? Pogačar from a big group winning. But he's clearly got that real turn of pace. Demonstrated it last year.
Of course, his big mate is Michael Matthews, isn't it? Maybe he's been practicing with him.
Certainly a good person to practice with, if that is indeed the case. They train a lot together, don't they, as well? Down in Monaco. Training the lanes in and around Nice.
Just under 52 k's to go. Coming up to the finish line then. 2 long laps about to start now. There's obviously something happening behind, and that something is Jan Tratnik pulling things along with pace. And this is, I imagine now, Jumbo-Visma trying to take control for that eventual Primož Roglic moment that we saw a moment ago. If Jan Tratnik can keep this going, slowly bring it back, stop any attacks, that will make another Primož Roglic special. Highly likely again, won't it?
Exactly, and also when you look at the rider sat on the wheel of Tratnik, it's the pole, isn't it? It's Rafa Majka, and then Diego Ulissi just sat behind. Still there, not too far away, Pavel Sivakov, but the sort of riders that are now assembled at the front, especially the first 3, suggested they're going to try and take things up. Make it hard on the climb, but importantly, deter any sort of attacks. And to answer your question, yeah, it's reassuming control of the race to try and put a lid on what, for the last few laps, have been great entertainment, but chaotic from a team perspective. So now they've taken it up, knowing that we've got one of the hardest climbs of the day, the first of 2 ascents of the climb of the Moro Solo to come.
Breakaway of 5 coming up to the finish line again. And once they're through it, there will be 2 laps to go, but long ones. 25 kilometers per lap. And that addition of the new climb. It's worth mentioning that each lap contains this climb as well. Remember, half of the climb always coming after the finish line too. So Walter Calzoni through what will be the final kilometre when they get here in 2 big laps time.
Yeah, it's a nasty drag to the line. So not super steep, but just nagging, isn't it? Sort of 4% at its steepest. The gap continuing to come down. That relentless metronomic rhythm being set by Jan Tratnik, who was so good at this job. And right now, the man behind him, Rafa Majka, doesn't need to do too much, but I think on the climb, he might assist as well to try and keep it. Just keep that chain nice and tight. Maybe drop a few riders from the back as well. Reduce this group, because I don't think, given what we've learnt about this race over the last few years and looking at the results, looking at the strength in depth here, this group certainly won't be this big last time up the climb, that's for sure.
This is where it changes. You talked about the drag. 350, 400 metres to go. It's then downhill to the finish. It's
really
a
fast,
lightning fast finish.
Yeah, it certainly is. The finish opens up with about 300 metres to go, and that's one of the reasons I think we saw Pogacar open up so early, because if it's a fast finish, you can afford to open up early, especially if there's no wind in the face as well, and that's certainly what he did a couple of years, well, last year when he won it.
This is where the race changes then for the breakaway, Matt, because you've got 5 riders out there. They've come across the finish. The next few kilometres will be the same before they then head out to the extra climb, make that figure of 8 that you talked about, taking all of the 3 valleys of Varese, and then they come back to the finish in Varese itself.
Yep, it won't be too long before they're actually on that new climb. They'll take a slightly different direction. And then the second part of the figure of 8 circuit, as you said, Rob, was the pre-existing circuit that they've covered already on 8 different occasions. But yeah, an interesting finale. Not one we normally get. Normally, the way that races based on circuits generally unfold or are designed is big circuits first, then smaller, and you end up on the smaller circuit. But this one, quite different, quite unorthodox in that regard.
A race with its own identity. It's a team with its own identities off the front yet again. EF Education Easy Post are not content with this Jumbo-Visma control at the front. You can understand why, given the probability of another dose of Roglification. As we mentioned the other day, our great mate Daniel Frieber's term for, well, just what Roglic does at the end of every race. Chavez was getting a little bit of help, not full committal. What it has done, though, is disrupt that work again that was being done by Tratnik. Israel Premier Tech sending a couple of riders to the front. Gregor Mühlberger is always there or thereabouts. Sivakov is having a look again for Ineos Grenadiers. This now is Quentin Pachier.
Well, that was a Nick Schultz at the front there for the Israel Premier Tech team, just moving in. A very good climber himself, just making sure there was representation. Making sure they didn't miss out. Remember, they've got Tierns, Williams and Woods. Assuming they're in the group. I haven't really seen Mike Woods sleep, but I'm sure he's nestled safely in the peloton. See if we can spot him there. I certainly did see Romain Bardet.
Good glimpse there of Rui Costa as well, the former world champion. Still at it as we sort the Vuelta a España. Now then, there's a bit of looking around. Now after you, sir.
Yep, everybody's looking about, so who's going to take things up now? So Mühlberger, the Austrian road champion, on the radio just to see what we do next. Davide Formolo has just moved up as well onto the wheel of the Austrian champion. But it's an interesting name. You mentioned Rui Costa. He's going well, isn't he? And again, he's one of the smartest riders out there, as we see an attack from the French national champion. Valentin Madouas now goes clear.
Yes, Madouas from Brittany out there at the front, from a good cycling family. Of course, his father was professional. He has managed to become the French champion. It's a big week for the French team. Yesterday they said goodbye to Mathieu Ladanius, who retired after a long period of service in the same team since turning pro. On Saturday it will be Thibaut Pinot's turn to leave the pro peloton. There's plenty more to come from Valentin Madouas, including an upping of the pace here.
Yeah, good little move. Just used just the natural curve of the road there, went straight through the apex and shot out the other side just to get that added bit of momentum. But his tenure at the front was exceptionally brief. Slots back into the wheels there. Formula now on the wheel of Mühlberger, 1:36. And for the time being, I was about to say for the time being, no UE in the front, but they're moving up. Just as I said that, Rafa Majka moves through to the front again, just to reassume some sort of control of this race.
Keep an eye on Mühlberger there. Let's not forget that both Alex Aramburu and Enric Mas are here today for the Spanish team, so they have opportunities and cards to play for either a faster finish or a more selective race. Mas, as we saw on Saturday in Emilia, was in form.
Exactly, and like you say, if Aramburu were to be there at the finish, he's got one of all the riders here. It could be one of the most dangerous. He's finished off races on his own in the past, but from a group sprint at the end, could be very dangerous. Actually, one of those stealth outliers that it wouldn't be a surprise if he rolled things today. And that's why Team Emirates and Jumbo-Visma in particular will want to make this finishing circuit, this double figure of 8 finishing circuit, as hard as possible. Just make sure there's a group that they can control and maybe try and attack from, or risk going for a sprint from.
So Movistar are now controlling, and that is very interesting indeed.
It is.
Again, you wouldn't think it would be on them. I know Mas is a good rider. Aramburu, like you say, is a fast rider, but is it really on them? Do they have the favourite here? Again,
this is another conversation, isn't it? And it's an important one. And there are other teams here. And because of the dominance, and we always almost default to UAE and Jumbo-Visma. It used to be Ineos back in the day, but maybe not quite as much now. They are the two dominant teams. But also, as a DS, as a road captain, and as a squad, you don't want to let these big teams always dictate what's going on. And every team will have their own sort of plan. And sometimes, although you see other teams move through to front and do stuff, it's because it's important to break this cycle of like almost defaulting to the two big teams and giving them control of the race and giving them, I think, a psychological and tactical advantage. So why not mix things up? Because what it does as well as gives riders in that team that bit of added confidence that they're heading the front, it also makes the other riders in the teams that are dominant second guess, well, what are they up to? What's this going to be all about? Okay, do we need to rethink this? It doesn't exactly sow seeds of doubt, but it causes them to think slightly differently. And again, and if other teams get involved too, it's this creative disruption. And it's important that other teams go against the grain sometimes, and we don't always get this default setting. But yeah, it's an interesting one. They clearly got a lot of faith in the way that Aramburu is riding, perhaps for the finish, or trying to tee things up for Enric Mas. It's got to be one of the two, because there's nobody else from that team really that I think is going to take this one. They've got a great team, although Serrano is now done. He was in the move earlier on. Verona would need to go on a climb, go long on his own, I think. But it's an interesting one, but I think it's good to see.
Carlos Verona riding his last few races for Movistar before he leaves and heads to Lidl Trek. What is a really beefed up roster next year. A really exciting squad being put together by the American team. Just over a minute now. Bit by bit, pedal stroke by pedal stroke, things are changing. And it's at this point, at the bottom of this climb, where the riders will then, it's the bottom of this descent, you know what I mean, after the climb. We're nearly at the end of the season now, I'm sure you'll forgive me that one. When we get there, we'll head on to a new section of the course, and the second climb on the larger loop, if you like, takes them up to Morozolo.
Yeah, that should come at about 33 kilometres to go, the top of that climb. So it's quite a fast run in to the bottom of that new climb on this finishing circuit. Then we do it again, of course, passing through the finish. 25 k's to go.
I should say actually Morozolo. So I think it should be pronounced Morozolo. Just outside of Calcinate. And then heading up into Varese. Just looking down, I hope there's no issue with the trains today, because we've got 2 level crossings to get through in the final 37 k's.
Yeah, that will be a little bit disruptive, wouldn't it? Fingers crossed.
Forget I mentioned it. Forget I mentioned it.
Oh, stranger things have happened, but yeah, let's assume that's not going to happen. This is the peloton behind, plummeting down the other side. Real high speed hit. Still, it looks like it's the figure of Mühlberger on the front, takes them into that corner. Still the figure of two riders from UE Team Emirates, Rafa Maika. Just behind him is the figure of Diego Ulissi.
And this is Busato's second wheel, just behind the former under-23 champion of the world. That's Battistella. Busato is the current under-23 champion of Italy. As you mentioned, winner of Liège under-23 earlier this year, so the boy can climb.
Yeah, Calzoni as well, still looking good for Q36.5, only 22 from Brescia. And a lot of faith has been shown in him. He's done well recently, but he's got a contract with the newly formed team of Doug Ryder through to the end of 2026. So clearly a rider that they believe in. He's shown a lot of potential. Had a couple of good results recently as well. 6th in the Coppa Sabatini, 8th in the Memorial Marco Pantani as well. And he's clearly got pretty good legs today.
And here he is at the front in that grey jersey. Ring 233. Just having a look at that peloton, and the camera for the first time today picked out Tadej Pogacar. Just 2 wheels in front of him was Enric Mas. Enric Mas, the man from the Balearic Islands. Of course, now, like many pro cyclists, resident in Andorra. Left behind the beautiful Mediterranean for the cold of the Pyrenees.
I think what we might see in a bit, Rob, I think as we head towards the bottom of that steeper climb of the Morosolo, which comes in about 5k's time, roughly, that's where we might see the pace really being picked up and the lead really start to chip away, or drop away, should I say. It's only a shortish climb, only 1,600 metres. But once they go over the top of that climb, the road continues up for about another 90 metres in terms of elevation. So you've got that climb, small descent, then it kicks up again. And it's that particular section of road that could prove to be interesting in terms of teams wanting to open things up early again, because of course we are only on the first of these 2 big laps of 25k's, and for us as well it will be quite insightful to see what could potentially happen there last time through as well, with only 13 kilometres to go. So let's have a look. And that over the last couple of years has been where we've seen where the lead group in the race, or the bunch, should I say, that's where it's been reduced the most because of those steeper gradients, and I'm expecting a sharp acceleration first time up.
Keep your eyes on this one. We're building up to the Giro di Lombardia at the weekend. We're racing on Lombardy roads at the moment, and it's the Tre Valli Varesine that's giving the final opportunity for many of the big leaders to tune things up for the last monument of the season. Just under 42 kilometres remain. 1 minute and 6 seconds. 5 of the original 8 men in the breakaway remain. Led down this hill by the Italian Samuele Battistella, alongside Rochas, Busato, Vetter and Calzoni. Main peloton, or what's left of it, being led by Gregor Mühlberger, Austrian national champion, racing for Movistar. UAE Emirates have had riders up there, Jumbo-Visma, as you'd expect, have controlled parts of this. And they have it in hand. The 5 riders have been fantastically combative up the front. Maximum gap of about 5.5 minutes. But you get the feeling that despite their strength, they're going to need something majorly special here if they're to stay anywhere near to the front of the race for too much longer. They're losing time all over the course, mostly on the climbs, also on several of the routes. Now, normally they would have turned left there. Now they turn right onto a very different part of the loop, and they begin to head away to our new climb. The next kilometre or two, the only real flat bits of the whole circuit. Say flat, sort of false flat downhill for a kilometre or two. Gap at a minute now, with 40 kilometres to go. Just 1 minute exactly then. Still waiting to get a nice close look. I'm sure we'll get that once we get down on the flat. They are flying down this hill. Just goes below a minute. And again, it's just turned off, Matt, onto the new part of the loop now. So new roads that we're seeing in this longer loop now.
It's a real fast section. When they go through Montello, we're at 478 metres. They drop right down to only about 200 metres. So they lose best part of 1,000 feet in elevation over the period of about 7 or 8k. So it's quite a drop. But they do have to ride up the other side, and that's where this next steep climb will come in pretty short order as well. But still only Mühlberger driving the pace. And really lined out here. 56 seconds is the lead. Under a minute for the first time since we've come on here, Rob. But yeah, no hanging around, and Mühlberger's putting right in the gutter as well. So the wind coming from the right-hand side, meaning that if he's over on the other side of the road, they would get a lot of shelter. So Mühlberger doing the business here, looking for a little bit of assistance. I think there'll be plenty of assistance when they hit the climb, that's for sure. I do think that it will be UE that take things up. That's why we've seen Maike and Ulissi at or near the front. They've got a particular job to do. They wouldn't be there just to sit on the wheel of Mühlberger. They know what's coming up, and they've got a job to do.
Samuele Battistella, former winner of the Veneto Classic. That line at the bottom of the graphic there, reminding our Italian viewers what we were telling you not so long ago. I think he was the under-23 world champion. Here's the former Spanish champion, Carlos Rodriguez, and his Ineos Grenadiers team are going to work together now for the first time. Things are changing in this race. This is now anybody's game, and it looks like it's going to be a real contested, selective finale. And Carapaz is now being moved up to the front of affairs on the other side. Here we go.
Yep.
Roglic ready, Pogacar on his wheel.
Yeah, they know what's coming up. Tischmanuk just on the inside there as well. Sparali, there's Enric Mas just on the shoulder, in between, sandwiched between Roglic and Tadej Pogacar. And there's this climb.
On to it for the first time. There'll be 2 ascents of the climb in total. Go back and take on the other climb, the Varese, the main climb first. And with 51 seconds of a gap, they're trying to survive. And these different gradients will sting the legs after 160 kilometres of racing already. And there's the vital statistics. 1.7 kilometres long. Average gradient high at almost 7%. Double digits for the first time today, Matt, as a maximum.
Yep. You can see that first part, just the first couple of 100 metres there were pretty steep. You've got this little levelling out, then it will kick again. So it's by far the hardest climb that we've had today. And coming this deep into the race, it's going to be very difficult. And you can see that this is probably where it's around 10%. It kicks up again. And all the other climbs have been climbing on the big ring. Now they're dropping it down to the small ring for the first time today.
Simon Yates towards the front of Trevalli Varesine. Jeko Lula having their man there. Quentin Pachal is there as well for Groupama FDJ. Richard Carapaz now in 5th wheel in his national champions jersey of Ecuador. And some of the big names starting to move to the fore. 41 seconds behind the breakaway, or what's left of it. And this group is probably going to be thinned out on this particular climb as well.
Yep, if they continue to ratchet up this pace, Formolo in the centre there. As you say, Chavez just on the inside. Movistar moving up to the left-hand side. Roglic not wanting to go to the front right now, of course, but just making sure he's not too far away from the front. Mühlberger moving up on the inside again, perhaps to add a little bit of impetus, and that's exactly what he's doing. Rolls through to the front. Nick Schultz, it looks like it's on the front in the centre. Oh, Healy goes.
And there is Healy going. You could just see it coming. Moving around the outside, try to get to the front, and this is the way he knows. And it looks as though it's Pachal who's going to follow him.
Yep, lost a little bit of momentum on that corner, didn't he? Went a bit bumpy on the corner, on that broken section, just on the extreme left of the road. I don't know if he might have even had to feather his brake, but it's a pretty rough road surfaces, but Pachal's with him. Is he going to give him a turn? Yes, he is. Here's that move again.
There was a rider from Ineos, by the way, just in the way in the back of the shotters.
Yeah.
He was only just to be able to get through that little gap. Was it a gap that existed? Well, for Ben Healy it did. It's like a bunch sprint, that.
Well, there was quite a little bit of a drop-off there as well. He managed to use that for an added bit of tiny momentum as well. And now really onto this steeper long section of this climb now, as Rochas continues to drive hard on the front and the gap continuing to come down. You could just see Healy just in view there a little bit further down the climb.
Breakaway is in sight now. Healy's there being chased by Sivakov. Simon Yates wants to get in on the act.
Ooh, Battistella dropped from that group and being caught by Sivakov. Yates, as you say, looks like Kron is there as well from Lotto Destiny.
Emmerich Mas in about 10th position following on. Yonis Aguirre suddenly comes to the fray. Of course, they've been in the breakaway all day, haven't they, with Rochas, so no panic really for Cofidis, but they bring themselves to the fore now, and Pogacar sits in 6th wheel, ready to pounce. Only 4 left in the break. Calzoni, so impressive.
Yep, Rochas looks pretty calm as well, doesn't he, the Frenchman? Only 16 seconds now. Still a little bit more climbing to go round that little hairpin. Tell you what, Pacher's looked good. He just followed every single move here, and there's a real significant gap has opened up here.
With Pacher on the wheel of the rider from Lotto Destiny. 16 seconds. It'd be good to look left, wouldn't it, to see if Healy's still there, or in fact whether he was reabsorbed in all of that chaos, because if Pacher was absorbed too, I would hazard a guess that Healy's back in the bunch. Yeah,
I think Healy just faded a little bit when he was caught by Sivakov. I think he is back in.
Kron has looked good today, hasn't he, for Lotto Destiny. Pacher is out the back here behind the rider from Lotto. Just looking down in this shot, and no sign of Ben Healy.
This is this hard section that we're talking about. We're over the top of that particular part of the climb. They've got this fast section now, and then it kicks up again and drags on for another couple of kilometres. So really hard terrain here is indeed Andres Kron. And this that attack by Kron has provided the catalyst for a lot of other riders to try and go on the offensive over the top of this climb before it kicks again.
Other riders to keep your eye on for Lotto Destiny today: Van Eerdveld, Van Gils, Verhoeven.
Yeah, Kron, one would imagine, would be their protected leader. Has gone on the offensive pretty early. Also saying pretty early, 35k to go isn't particularly early if you want to make a race winning move. They've still got to catch the breakaway. And the way that Kron is riding here, it's looking like he might get across the gap there, but good riding there by Pacher to get back in contact. I don't think he's going to be working with him anytime soon after bridging that gap. He went pretty deep there. Immediately, there was a rueful shake of the head, said, look, I'm not going to come through just yet, mate.
They can see the remaining 4 riders in the break up the road now, just 13 seconds away. Second part of the climb here. We're approaching halfway around our brand new long lap.
We've got about
Chasers
another...
on your screen.
Sorry, Rob, we've got about another 1,500 metres, between 1,500 metres and 2k of climbing before we then drop back down again and enter the familiar part of the circuit. It's Attila Valter here.
And he's got company.
Looks like that's Lucas Hamilton on his wheel, actually.
Jaco Alula have got an aggressive team today, a good team. Zana's here as well. Of course, winner of the Giro stage, wasn't he, in that Italian national jersey that he then lost. As Bozzato, the Italian under-23 champion this year, is looking to be the last man standing. For Jaco Alula, it is Filippo Zana, in fact, who's in that chase there.
Apologies, yep. So Zana looking all right.
And look at this, though, the 2 Italian next generation fighting it out to be the last man standing here. Bozzato for Intermarché, who, by the way, big news yesterday, because he learned from the Söder, has admitted that he will no longer be in the sports director's chair for that team. Now, problem for one of the riders from Cofidis.
I think that was actually Rochas, who's had a bit of a bike change there off his bike. Clearly had some sort of mechanical problem. But meanwhile, up in front, as you say, the 2 Italians both looking very, very strong. Of course, riding on home soil. Or no.
So Aguirre here. Behind him is...
That's Rochas, yeah.
Rochas, and I think Rochas has given his bike to Izaguirre, given that Rochas has now been caught in the breakaway. Izaguirre with that issue.
Yeah, not doing a wheel change. Of course, you can't do a wheel change these days unless you've got a Allen key in your back pocket with a disc. So it's a quick bike change. It's going to be a fair bit of a differential in sizes there. So hopefully Izaguirre can get a spare bike sooner rather than later.
On the steeper slopes of the longer loop at this 102nd edition of Tre Valli Varesine. 2 remaining riders from the breakaway, Busato, Calzoni, the 2 young Italians, but behind those who want to win this race, the favourites are encroaching upon them. One of the pre-race favourites, I'm afraid we have to report, has been taken to hospital because away from the pictures, Giulio Ciccone has suffered a crash, and as a precaution he has gone to hospital to be checked out. So all the best to Giulio Ciccone, and let's hope he is well and fit enough to race at the weekend. We want to see him in that Giro di Lombardia.
Yeah,
here are the chasers then, Matt.
Yep, Sivakov at the head of affairs as well. Kron is there, Attila Valter. Already mentioned that Zana is there as well for Team Jayco Alula. Also represented, saw one of the jerseys from Israel Premier Tech, but still that
Stevie Williams.
Stevie Williams riding well, having a good back end of the year, so on a new contract to stay with the Israeli team for a couple more years.
It's a biggish group still.
Yeah, it looks like the actual
splits.
Yeah, it looks like, well, what's left of the bunch, it's all come back together here, doesn't it? 9 seconds now for the 2 Italians out in front, but
Tax off the front. Jayco Alula are going to follow this one again. This is just before we go off the top and the longest descent in the race, actually.
Yeah, it is
and
the
a
best
reminder
part
that when we get to the final few kilometres, Matt, in the final 10Ks, we go over this climb, and when we're through the next time, it will be this descent, followed by the first half of the climb to Varese to the finish.
Yeah, so a fair bit of climbing to go, densely packed, but there's hardly any flat at all as we drop off this one. As you say, the best part of 5 or 6K is downhill. Little bit of hesitation, opening up the gap a little bit more, but the bunch aren't too far behind. But impressive riding by these 2 young Italians, Busato and Calzoni, relaying well, finding something special. Extra little bit of adrenaline as well, especially on the climbs when you've got the Tifosi calling your name. It's going to give you that added little bit of impetus, but sustaining it as we hit the climbs again is going to be hard.
Adam Yates into this front group. Rigoberto Urán's looking good today.
Yep.
And there's a teammate alongside Quentin Pachel now, as Busato and Calzoni continue their 2-up adventure. Two first-year professionals.
Yeah, both looking very good on this fast section here. There's the split that's behind, swelling ever so slightly as 1 or 2 more riders just latch on to the back here. Astana look like they're going to be represented too. Somebody that's very eager to ride here is Rigoberto Urán. Hits the front once more. Attila Valter certainly not doing any riding because Roglic isn't there, so he'll just sit on, use that as a ticket not to ride.
And as you say, that one more of the Killer Bee jerseys gets on towards the back. So Jumbo-Visma have 2 in this group, but as you can see, it looks as though it's going to just about come together as I say that.
It does look like it, doesn't it? I think we've also just seen, I think it was Simone Velasco at the back of that group for Astana as well. So another Italian, the former Italian road champion. Oh no, sorry, Velasco is the Italian road champion, isn't he? Or is that Scaroni? It's Velasco, isn't it? Sorry.
Velasco.
Velasco, I was right.
Do you know what? I've been there in my head a few times this year, Matt, since that happened. So you are not the only one to have been there. Yes, Velasco is the reigning champion. He races today. Wasn't present yesterday. Scaroni was. Of course, Zana is the man who was the Italian champion for this year's Giro d'Italia as he won that mountain stage. He's now back in the blue and white of Jayco Alula, as we've just seen as he was chasing on to that last group. The main group now, just 6 measly seconds behind the 2 remaining riders from the break. 30 kilometres to go. We're now approaching the final lap. 5Ks until we're through the finish again, and it will be 1 lap to go.
Yep, heading towards Casbeno again. This part of the circuit that will be familiar with. Still driving hard though. Calzoni pulling exceptionally hard on the front. This is the bit that we're familiar with that takes her through into the finish again. So you recognise those this particular section of road and the padded islands. Big stretch at the back there.
Stretch at the back at almost 60 k's an hour. One rider trying to come across. To see who it might be.
Yeah, the way these
go upwards.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a drag, isn't it? Real fast section of the circuit. You can see not much flat. The only little bit of flat is really through the finish, but that's ever so slightly dropping. 6 seconds at this speed means a couple hundred meters. Not quite in sight just yet. Has it all come back together here? Difficult to see. I can't quite see the back end of that group containing Rigoberto Urán and Attila Valter.
Urán is to the right-hand side there. To the left here, we've got a couple of riders up the front. One from Jumbo-Visma. Representation from Arkea Samsic as well. 5 seconds is the gap. So Jumbo-Visma, the team in the chase here. We know we've seen Attila Valter, but that's not him, because this is a normal trade jersey. I can tell you the rider involved looks to be... Is that Tishmanot? Sure.
Looks like it's the rangy figure of Warren Badgil, but I can't quite tell from here, as we're quite far away.
Doubtless we'll get a close-up view in a moment, because they're about to join the two at the front as they go up the hill and on the way to the finish line. Now, this looks like it might be Kelderman, actually.
Yeah, it's that's definitely Kelderman. He's got that very square style on the bike, hasn't he? On the drops, bridging across this gap. It's Warren Badgil on the wheel there. The morphology of both of those riders close up. Pretty easy to identify once we get them in focus.
So Kelderman in the yellow and black, Badgil in the red jersey. And a salute to the man in grey, Calzoni, and the man who's been with him, Busato. Both looking like they're on the way to join in the absolute ballers category. Busato just losing the wheel. Calzoni, so strong. Three at the front on the race around the three valleys of Varese. Tre Valli Varesine. The big final dress rehearsal for most of the leaders before the Giro di Lombardia. A reminder that we have Gran Piemonte coming up. Some will be racing there, as we see Adam Yates leading things behind in the white and black for UAE. Tadej Pogacar, his teammate in this group.
Yep, interesting little move there. So Calzoni doing well to hold on to the two riders that have joined him. And in particular, it's like Kelderman's been given the green light to ride here. So Kelderman, so the Jumbo-Visma now, all they'll just need to do is sit back and monitor these moves. But I tell you what, Warren Badgil has got a very decent finish. I tell you what, if I had to bet, and Kelderman and Badgil were to go to the finish, although I don't think that is going to happen. This is just an interesting little play before the finale. They're certainly putting themselves in the frame, but Badgil has got a scintillating sprint finish for someone you assume is just a climber.
Kelderman, of course, often talked about as one of the next big things in stage racing. Never really quite made that step up that a lot of people were hoping and expecting. Kelderman has never won a road race. He's won prologues and time trials and won GC prize in his career, but Wilco Kelderman has never ever won a road race. It's always a good time to start, isn't it? But if you're looking to pass markers, people with experience, Wilco Kelderman is not the man for that.
Look how rock steady he is on the bike there. That beautiful fluidity. His upper body hardly moving at all. Just so efficient. Part of the engine room of... he's a domestic deluxe, isn't he now? Let's be perfectly honest. He's got a specific role in that team, but he still has that versatility. And Busato now starting to suffer on the look at the face of the 22-year-old, grimacing.
What a debut in this race.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Morning breakaway for the 22-year-old from just down the road in Brescia. Excelled in positions at the start of the season.
They put Jay Vine on the front, didn't they?
Had been hanging around the front, Adam Yates, but Jay Vine is here. Vine, the Australian. O'Connor, his compatriot, in about sixth wheel, the leader you would think of Age des Arts Citroën, although Cosnefroid's here as well.
Yeah, definitely. Should it come to what Cosnefroid, we know how strong he is and how quick a finish as well that Cosnefroid has got. If he was there at the end, he'd definitely one to look at and certainly would pose a threat. The group reduced enormously from the time that we passed through here about 20 kilometres ago or so. They just fan either side of that. Yeah, this fan either side. There's a flattish shape to the front, meaning that nobody's going to take it up here. Movistar there, and another big attack.
Alpecin Koenig this time going at the front, and that looked like Uran wanted to follow again. That was the style of Rigoberto Uran, and there he is, trying to get here, try to follow. Sbaragli, the man who, of course, once upon a time was a sprinter and stage winner at the Vuelta a España. His only pro win. But look at Rigoberto Uran. I think he's hitting some form at the end of the season here, the Colombian.
He certainly is, straight over the top there, Sbaragli, as we head through to the front. And this trio chipping away and starting to open up a nice little gap here. Of course, Busato is now a passenger. Don't blame him. He's had a big day out. So Calzone, should I say. Busato has already been dropped, but he's been brought back now. Uran, that little move has been snuffed out yet again. But it's forced a little split of about 10 or 12 riders.
The back of that split, one of the riders from Israel Premier Tech. A Jayco Lula rider coming across. And it's Rigoberto Uran for the umpteenth time pushing. He really is in rehearsal mode, isn't he, for the weekend? He's giving it go after go after go. And he's making it a difficult race for his teammate following. It's exactly, I'm sure, what Richard Carapaz wants.
Well, this is exactly what we know Uran can do very well. He can just go, when he's in good form, he continues with those sorts of attacks until ultimately people's heads just drop. He just goes, it's not just that tenacity, it's that pure definition of what fitness actually is those repeated efforts. Okay, he might not have the biggest punch in the world, but what he can deliver is 5 or 6 in rapid succession, ultimately breaking the will of those riders with. It's like, oh, you just go. And that's what Rigoberto Uran can do. So experienced, so smart, and as you said, Rob, clearly in some pretty decent form, to have the confidence to do that.
Last lap then as Barguil alongside Calzone at the back and Kelderman in the centre start to take on the final 25 kilometres. Calzone is yet to win among the professionals. Kelderman, who's never won a one-day race. Barguil, who's been proven winner. There's Enric Mas who follows. Madouas in the chase. This is Uran.
Yeah, that was Mauri von Sevenens from Soudal Quickstep also in that little move as well, the Belgian.
Two climbs to go. First they take on half a climb, if you like, the second half of this climb, and this will be for the final time this second half as it slows again. Uran's latest move is brought back only after big work, and now it looks as though Alpecin Koenig are going to have another go.
Yep, big attack on the left-hand side this time, followed by Ejitoir, the man in the blue there for Astana. Look at Howard Tejada, very decent climber, but it's Sbaragli again by the looks of things.
Being followed by a rider this time from Age des Arts Citroën. 15 seconds for these three. Calzone's still going to sit on, you imagine.
Yeah, this
deserves to.
Yeah, he'd unless he's feeling super special, the longer he can just stay at the front of the race, just get over these climbs. He's almost now got to think about, okay, hang on for as long as I can, get over this climb. Let's see if I can get over the next one. And he might find himself at the front of the race. And that's the way you've got to ride it. But it looks like it's Yates now on the front, doesn't it? Adam Yates. So it looks like him from here. Out of the saddle, turning that big gear, just winding things in, bringing things back together here as the lead moves out now to 9 to 18 seconds.
Now, who's going to commit here? Of course, we've seen Adam Yates racing. You'd imagine at Jumbo-Visma, if there's a good feeling in the legs of Primož Roglic, they want to make sure that he's there or thereabouts and in with an opportunity. But, in fact, I'm going to scratch that because I looked to the front of the race and they've got a man in this move, so why would they?
You know, I don't think they'll be doing any of that. I think they'll be just sitting, watching, waiting, making sure that if there are any significant counter-attacks, they either bring them back or they join them and just sit on. So Jumbo-Visma, so far, playing it tactically very cool as we head on to the Montello climb. This is that long drag that you were talking about, not as steep as the Moro Solo, which is yet to come, comes around halfway round the finishing circuit.
Issues here. Oh dear. And there's been a crash. That is an issue for William Junior Lecerf, who, by the way, won at the weekend in the under-23 Giro di Lombardia, and there's a rider involved with him for Astana, Kazakhstan. So problems for the young man from the Soudal Quick-Step development team, who today races with the seniors. Back on his bike, but there's an issue there for a rider from Astana, Kazakhstan. May well have been Tejada. I'm not sure.
Yep. We'll wait for confirmation of that one. As Wilco Kelderman rolls through to the front. A beautiful, smooth style of his. And this man at the back, Walter Calzoni, is doing, well, ride of the day for me so far. Holding on to two riders who are classy, but importantly, when you think about what the young Italian's done all day, they're relatively fresh, but the fact he's staying in the wheels is mightily impressive. I certainly know that he's got a lot of suffering to come if he's going to stay in their wheels for the next few Ks. He's got to go very deep.
A bright afternoon around the town of Varese in northern Italy. 16 seconds for the trio at the front of the race. 22.5 kilometres remain. And there's one man still there from the morning breakaway. On the radio in the grey jersey, it's the young man, 22 years of age, from this part of the world, Walter Calzoni, and he's fed by a rival team, which is nice. He needed that. He deserves it. He'll have a thirst on.
He certainly will. Still around 25 degrees. A glorious, glorious autumnal day here. As he continues to just turn that low gear. He's been really sensible. He hasn't laboured at all. He's able to just flick that gear around, so he's thinking about things. He's pedalling really fluidly. As we head to the GPM. There'll be a separate little points classification for that, and the man that takes that one is Warren Barguil. Rolls over the top. Well, look at the pace here by Yates, 13 seconds now. This is some turn on the front by Adam Yates.
Knowing he has to bring this back, and of course, my earlier error, having not looked at who was in the break, when I was wondering who was going to chase, he has to do it all, doesn't he, really? Because there's no Jumbo-Visma assistance coming there up the road. It's a very good card to play if Kelderman can get in that move. It's exactly what he did, but the gap's down to 12 seconds now, with Adam Yates having to sacrifice things in favour of Tadej Pogacar. Gets it down to 11 seconds now, as Barguil, an 8-time winner of his career. A Grand Tour specialist, a former national champion, a man who's won in Italy before, stage Tirreno Adriatico last season, and he's there with Kelderman, who hasn't won anything for 8 years since he was the national time trial champion of the Netherlands. Calzoni on debut, and in his pro year, yet to raise his arms at this level, but impressing everybody just by being there for now. There are 21.5 kilometres to go. It's descent time. And once we're done with this, time to go up the final, real difficult climb.
Just that aerial shot that we had then, you could see Calzoni just reaching round and just touching the back of his thigh there. That might be an indication of a little bit, well, his legs are going to be sore, but it could be a little bit of cramp, just giving his legs a bit of a massage there. Of course, his team will be on the radio, just telling him to sit on there, eat and drink. Even with this sort of distance to go, the amount of calories that he spent today has gone very deep. Just keeping on top of the fluids in warm conditions like this. Just these gentle reminders. But it has been a superb debut ride by him, that's for sure. But the next climb is going to be a different proposition with those added gradients. I think it's going to be hard for him to hold on. But I think Adam Yates has got a lot more in the tank as well. But it's interesting they committed Yates so early on, isn't it? That's for me. But I think he's going to go again on this next climb.
Another 1,000 meters tick away. 20,000, 20 Ks to go. 13 seconds for Barguil. As victory came in Spain at the Gran Premio Indurain just over a year ago. Same year when he won a stage in Tirreno. His last few races with his current jersey on his back before he moves to DSM. Pace is furious behind, and now Chavez starts to commit. And we know that Carapaz must be feeling good today, because that team has been disruptive, have been aggressive, attacking, and they do not want to miss the opportunity either. So Chavez giving his all for Carapaz, Yates doing exactly that for Tadej Pogacar. And at the minute, the three riders they're chasing, well, only two are riding. It's 2v2 here, man.
Yep, certainly is. I thought for a moment there that Tawoko Kelderman was trying to take this young man out of the back, Calzoni. He's just latched himself on, terrier-like here, but yep, EF Education, Easy Post, using some of their resources now. Clearly, Richard Carapaz must be feeling good. Healy has shown, but then he's not quite, he's had that punch, he's tried to get away a couple of times, but he hasn't managed to continue the effort, has he? But clearly Rigoberto around feeling good, but they're using a resource now in conjunction with UE team members to try and bring this gap down. 15 seconds it is now.
Here is Yates on the front. Former teammate of Esteban Chavez, back in their days together at the Australian team. It is now Jaco Alula. Third wheel sitting there ready. Jumbo-Visma wait with Steven Kruijswijk. Falters around. Main man, of course, is Primož Roglič today.
You do wonder, in using Yates so early, I wonder where Vine, Ulissi and Micah are. That's the interesting one for me. I'd imagine they're still there. They wouldn't want to use one rider so early unless they're just changing things around a little bit. But Vine has done a lot of work earlier on. But interesting that they're using Yates now with 18.4 Ks to go. They obviously know what they're doing, but I find it quite an intriguing one.
What about Steven Kruijswijk's presence there at the front? I think he might have just rolled over into second place. Now, is he trying to disrupt this chase a little bit?
I think so. They'll just try and get in them, mix it up, get in the wheels. They won't go to the front and pull the brakes on, but they'll just make it. They'll just try and disrupt a little bit, and also putting himself into a good position, just in case there's counter-attacks on this climb as well. You got Richard Carapaz there. We know we've got the hardest climb of this circuit still coming up. We saw how difficult it was, and the fact it goes up in stages as well. Steep at the bottom, flattens, goes up again, flattens again. Then you've got that series of little hairpins. So it is a tough climb.
Over that little bridge again that we keep seeing on our coverage. This time it's to head out onto the second part of the figure of eight. The one that was introduced on the last lap. The one that we'll have for the second and final time now. Climb up to Morozolo.
Doing a good job out front. Sorry, they're still doing a good job. See how hard they're doing long turns. Kelderman and Barguil probably do it about 20 or 30 second pulls on the front, just to make sure they've got enough rest.
Their gap's grown a little bit again, 15 seconds.
It's going to be hard to make too much difference when you're doing speeds in excess of 55, 60 Ks an hour. It'll be more like, don't really eat into it here. But what they should do on the climb, unless Barguil and Kelderman are having an absolute superb day, is when we hit the next climb, that's where the gap, should I say, will really start to come down. And that's where I think we'll see attacks from other teams as well.
I guess it's also going to be the test here for Calzoni to see how long he can hang on.
Oh, definitely.
Second eked out for those in front. 16 now, with as many kilometres to go.
Yeah, these kilometres now ticking by pretty quickly as we approach the climb. Losing all that elevation, we've got to go back up again. It's a real varied series of climbs, isn't it? The Morozolo and what goes on over the top. Some real steep sections, some flat sections. It's not a climb that you can readily really settle into a rhythm. It's a real staccato style of climbing.
Adam Yates leads the chase. 3 riders to get back, 15 kilometres to go, 1.5 climbs left. Yates is being assisted by Chavez. Chavez there at the service of his fellow South American, Richard Carapaz. Adam Yates, the British rider, racing for Slovenian star Tadej Pogačar. In terms of great British finishes, well, the best was Phil Edwards in 1977, second place. Pete Kenyug was third 5 years ago. And of course, 20 years before that, 25 years ago now, Max Chandri, the Anglo-Italian, he finished on the podium. It was in 1998.
A couple more seconds have been taken off. I wonder if it's Max in the car actually today for Movistar as well. He'll know these roads very well. One would imagine that he would be the head DS for this series of races leading into Il Lombardia. Knows these roads like the back of his hand.
Gaps coming down again now. We're on the relative flat section before the climb starts. Yates and Chavez combining to good effect. There's still a very fine group of riders there as we go past Lake Varese. And this is where the rowing we talked about and the Australian Institute of Sport is based, down on the shores of what is a beautiful part of the world. Great trading roads around here. Fantastic racing roads today. And it has been an entertaining affair. Just what we want as we build up to the final monument of the season that you'll be able to watch around the world on Discovery Plus and GCN Plus. Join us for the entire race, start to finish, on Saturday.
Yeah, we just saw the that little right angle. This looks like it is going to be back together very shortly. Kelderman, eyes fixed in front, Balki locked onto his wheel, and the ever-impressive Calzoni's still there, but it looks like it's going to come back together just at the foot of the climb of the Morosolo. There's that little acute right-hander. Thankfully, by one of the rods from Iola Cometa, they went all the way there, the right way around it. A slightly longer line taken by the rider at the bottom of your screen. But yeah, right at the foot of the climb, that's the last place you actually want to get caught, Rob, but that is going to happen.
And it's all down again at the front here. On fire today, the Colombian. And really starting to put the pressure on. Israel Premier Tech with a few riders up there as well. Ineos Grenadiers watching and chasing. The breakaway is broken up. It's all back together. But for how long? Williams there, fourth wheel. You see that to Kelderman, his day in the venture is over. Barguil caught as well. Calzoni still wants to go, still wants to fight, still wants to be aggressive, and he's up onto the wheel now of Rigoberto Urán. What a debut this young Italian's having here.
You wonder if he's right at the very end, just completely empty in the tank here. He's the only rider able to stay with that stinging acceleration from the Colombian. He looks around, and he is still there. Still looks relatively happy, and has gone through and given this lad a turn as well. What a ride by Calzoni here. Sharp acceleration. He's actually dropped Rigoberto Urán, but how long he can sustain this sport remains to be seen. But this is impressive stuff.
Walter Calzoni, take a bow. This is quite sensational. And he's opening up metre by metre. Yes, the likelihood is he's going to be caught here. But this is quite the demonstration of force and fight.
Well, it certainly is a one to go all in. He's certainly putting on a display that will be remembered. And we are continually talking about him and Q36.5. This is a bold one, still 12.5 Ks to go. And there's some more steep pitches on this 1,600-metre climb. The short descent, then it kicks up again. It's a cruel, cruel climb. There's another one of these brutally steep sections. But he's doing a good job here. Who's going to be the rider that comes across the gap? This is some display.
Well, they have to take it seriously, given the fact there's only 12 kilometres to go. He's almost halfway up the climb here. Little bit of a respite halfway. Then he climbs to the top again. But behind it's kicking off, and it's Jonas Aguirre who starts the fireworks.
Yeah. Izagirre looking good. Richard Carapaz lurking a couple of spots down as well, but his time at the front is about to end, but take a bow. Absolutely superb.
O'Connor is there as well. Mass on the right-hand side. Calzoni is caught. What a ride. Here is Pogacar. Where is Roglic?
Can't see Roglic. That's a Zana on the wheel there. Zana just eases. Roman Bardet is also there. Attila Valter moving up as well. Pavel Sivakov in about 4th or 5th place. In the centre there as well. Now obscured Enric Mas in the blue of Movistar. Michael Woods just on the inside as well. They're just in front of Carapaz.
Vlasov.
And it's Alexander Vlasov that goes on the inside, Rob.
Vlasov then the move. No immediate chasers. Roglic is moving up on the left as we looked at it finally. Pogacar's been nicely placed. His team's done the work. Now we're getting to the stage where other leaders will follow, and this could be the moment. Hello, hello. Because Tadej Pogacar himself has started to get involved. He chases, he closes down, Roglic follows, Carapaz is there, it's Mas too, it's Zana, Bardet as well. All of the main actors are now on your screen, and Tadej Pogacar wants the leading role again.
Some acceleration by this man. Tadej Pogacar out of the saddle, and the lion has now snapped. Mas dropping off the wheel of Carapaz, but Roglic locked on to the wheel of his main rival. Carapaz glances round. He is there. It's not a big gap, though. This is where the road flattens, but it does kick again in a moment, Rob.
Pogacar off the gas. He waits and surveys the damage before it kicks once more. So the strongest legs have come to the fore, led by Tadej Pogacar. He's put in one dig, he's going to go for another. Just waits as it levels off, and as soon as it kicks up again, it's Pogacar to ride. Carapaz will ride with him. Roglic has shown that he will collaborate. Up there too you can see Enric Mas. Ilan van Wilder across from Soudal Quick-Step. That is Ben O'Connor from Age Desert, and there's a rider there as well from Israel Premier Tech.
You can't quite recognise who that is at the moment, but definitely an Israel Premier Tech jersey in the mix. Another launch straight over the top here. Carapaz Carapaz is the rider that's attacked here. Opened up a little bit of a gap. Yeah. Dangerous rider to let go clear, that is for sure. So Enric Mas of Movistar now fills the void between Carapaz and Primož Roglic.
Rider getting back on from Jayco and Lula to make sure that they're represented. We did see Filippo Zana up there. This is Carapaz. And it goes uphill again.
Yeah. Got that little series of hairpins still to come as we get near the top of this climb, but Carapaz fully committed here. Enric Mas is doing the riding. I wonder if that's actually Mike Woods in the mix there. He was right near the front. Mike Woods, it looks like it's the figure of Woods. Or is it Jakob Fuglsang? Just obscured at the moment.
There's an Ineos Grenadier in the chase as well behind Matt. Just off the camera shot right now. So Pogacar.
Yeah, Pogacar shuts the gap again. Mas happy, and look at the gap that's starting to open up now. Carapaz relaying now with Enric Mas as Pogacar continues to shut this gap. Carapaz and Mas clearly riding very well, and it does look like it's Mike Woods there. Mike Woods is the Canadian there for the Israel Premier Tech team.
Ilan van Wilder there at the back as well. O'Connor as Carapaz and Mas are caught by Pogacar. Roglic sitting in 4th wearing the yellow jersey. Again, looks like it could be the style of Zana behind. We'll see if we can get a closer look at the Jayco Alula man. That is indeed Michael Woods. And it is Filippo Zana of Jayco Alula, who's trying his best to make it onto the back here.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? He's having to go very deep there, Rob, to get back on. And look at the distance. Look at the gap that these riders have already opened up. Ilan van Wilder, the young Belgian, as you said, decides to go through to keep that momentum. Well, this could be interesting. O'Connor knows that this is a dangerous man too, and decides to attack across the gap.
So Ilan van Wilder, fresh off very recently his first professional victory. A tour of Germany, didn't he? And O'Connor goes, and the biggest names are waiting behind. They're playing a game, but it could be a dangerous game, this one, because Ilan van Wilder, as gifted as he is, he's not a Roglic yet, he's not a Pogacar, he isn't a Mas, he's not a Carapaz, the Olympic champ. It's Woods who's going to chase, whilst the biggest names watch each other.
Yeah, Van Wilder really attacked. See the way he attacked into the hairpin there. Took the long way around to carry that speed, and is really attacking the final part of this run to try and build himself a lead as we get over the top. Good move here by Ilan Van Wilder. I tell you what, Ben O'Connor couldn't respond to that. Started to close the gap, but has had to sit back a little bit. As we look at Izagirre at the back of this group. I think that's Carlos Rodriguez. I think it's Rodriguez.
Carlos Rodriguez in the chase. He was the rider from Ineos who we saw. Van Wilder, who's never won a one-day race yet, only 22. As I said, his first pro victory came last month in Germany. Took a stage in the overall there, the Deutschland Tour. But Van Wilder, last year or so in the shadow, really, of Remco Evenepoel, always gifted. Now being given his opportunities. He's got 20 seconds on the main group behind. What's his gap on those who was with a moment ago?
Well, he's absolutely flying here. Clearly confident. Just the way that he hit the bottom of the steep part, he just attacked it. He didn't just ride up it, he really went full gas. He's a lighter figure. It is Tadej Pogačar now on the front. Woods just behind him. And there's a rider that's... Well, that was Carapaz. I thought it was a little Trek rider, but of course it's the Ecuadorian champion's jersey. And Van Wilder in full flight now.
So Ilan Van Wilder for Soudal Quick-Step, who are looking for answers, who are looking for some joy here after all of the stress off the bike. Just looking up the road to find out the extent of the gap, and that's it. They can see him. But of course, this is Ilan Van Wilder. He's a special gifted rider, strong as he looks around. Has the descent to come here for a few kilometres, and then the half climb, if you like, up to the line in Varese with the final 300 or 400 metres that are downhill.
It's a climb that you can carry a lot of momentum. The steepest sections are done now, so this is a great move as we head onto the outskirts of Varese. You saw the sign on the right-hand side. Well, what are they going to do? The thing is, you've got all these superstars behind, but when you've got so many stars all in one place, they're not just going to ride together. They're going to want to try and jump across this gap themselves, try and force a split. This is looking good for Van Wilder, and it doesn't appear that anybody in this group, importantly, Rob, has got a teammate. So they're all riding in a disparate way, all riding for themselves here, and that makes a difference. So there's not one rider that you can use to sacrifice and commit to shut this down. So this isn't just a smart move, well, it isn't just a strong move by Van Wilder, it's a real strong one as well. So intellect, strength combined. That's the ultimate race-winning formula, and he's in full flight, 100% committed, but behind, they are not 100% committed. There's no real cohesion, no trust.
The 2019 winner Primož Roglic, who launched the last pursuit, again broke away with a couple of riders. His compatriot Pogačar was there, Ben O'Connor is as well, Mas Carapaz, Woods, Zana, Jonas Aguirre towards the back here. But they're all chasing Ilan Van Wilder, who's still 15 seconds ahead, off to the left-hand side of the picture, and looking in fine fettle.
He is. Now, if any of these riders had a teammate, they would be tasked just get on the front and bring this man back. But right now, although they are working together, we've got Carlos Rodriguez just at the back of this group. He was one of the last men on. No surprise that he's not doing any riding here, but it's holding steady, 6Ks to go. But it is a fast approach, although we've still got part of that drag to go. Rob, there's nothing really hard. There's nothing hard or steep to give traction to the group behind to try and attack.
What a moment this could be for Soudal Quick-Step after all the doubt and negativity around, the worry. They've got an opportunity to take a huge win and beat some of the best in the world at their own game. Pogačar, defending champion, rides at the front and chases. 15 seconds still to close down. All the meantime, Ilan Van Wilder, one of the top Belgian talents in the world, is racing to the final climb. He has an opportunity to make a little bit of recent history. The last Belgian to win this race was none other than Eddy Merckx, 1968.
Wow, that's some record that potentially could break. He's found another second. 16 seconds, 5Ks to go. We've got that nasty little drag to come.
Ilan van Wilder is 4.7 kilometres from beating this list of riders to victory. Something he will have dreamt about. Roglic, Pogačar, Mas, Carapaz, Rodriguez, Zana, Woods, Vlasov, O'Connor, all there trying to get him. We know he's a talent, we know he's a big rider, but he's been let off the leash. He's free, he's looking for his own chance, and he's riding away to glory right now.
Yep.
The question is, Matt, can he stand it up himself on the climb?
Yep, he's got this little opportunity to rest, getting into that nice aero tuck. Take a few deep breaths, just clear the lactate from his legs before getting on the power again for this last little section. He looks around, and at this sort of speed, with a 16-second time gap, he won't be able to see the riders behind, and conversely, they won't be able to see him as well. But it is only a slender lead. All it needs is for him to fade on this last climb, and some big attacks to come. He could be brought back, but with 3 kilometres to go, or 3.6, it is looking very good. This is an amazing win. I mean, this could be an amazing win, should I say. It hasn't quite happened yet, but there's still no cohesion behind. It's just attacks in ones and twos, everybody looking at each other. And we talked about this race being hard, but also because of the parkour, it's far more open. And anybody willing to try and take and anticipate, as we said before, has a chance. And that is what's ended up, well, that's what ended up being the case now.
Van Wilder is away 16 seconds, and it's Pogačar trying to defend his title from the front. He has Roglic on the wheel, third wheel is Mas. Pogačar's getting help now from his compatriot Primož Roglic, himself a former winner 4 years ago. Mas has been up here in this race before and is in form. Carapaz, the Olympic champion and current national champion of Ecuador, sits behind, but it's still the 23-year-old Belgian, Ilan van Wilder, in the last few months has talked about wanting his own chances, not just being an Evenepoel domestique. Since then, it's all kicked off the bike, hasn't it? Questions around the future of Soudal Quick-Step. The immediate future here could be a trip to the podium for Van Wilder. He's away, they're chasing, they've got a second back. At the minute, they need more.
Yep, they certainly do, especially when the road starts to flatten. Remember, the last kilometre or so, or the last, shall I say, 800 metres is flat, and then ever so slightly down here. Now that will tilt in his favour. Carapaz now moves to the front. They're not hanging around here, but they're not fully committed. And the gap has stabilised. Still 15 seconds to go. The other group are out of it. He's on the small ring, giving you an indication that this climb is a hard one, but he's maintaining a lot of momentum here, and he's found another second with 2.5 Ks to go. If he does pull this off, this will be absolutely sensational.
A reminder that the climb tops out with 0.5 kilometre to go. It is then downhill to the finish, as he's on a short rest period here, if we can just see it kicking up again. Downhill for the final 400 metres. If he gets there, and he has this gap, it's his. And behind, there's that little bit of hesitation as they try to keep everybody working. Now Rodriguez attacks because the gap goes to 18 seconds. 19. This is his to throw away now.
Yep. He's still looking very good. Just the way he rode, that when he attacked into that steep section, says to me he's got great legs. 20 seconds. Rodriguez on the front. He looks around. Again, he backs off. Roglic just on the wheel, isn't going to come through just yet. 2 Ks to go. This is looking very bright for the young man in front. He took the opportunity. He went at it, 100% committed, and it looks like he's going to pull off a famous victory, and an historic one at that.
Just the attitude of the two different riders in the shots. Van Wilder looks busier, looks like he's moving. This lot, yes, are working, but I think they're starting to look at each other for the podium.
Yep. Unless something strange happens to Van Wilder now with 21 seconds, only 1,700 metres to go. He's going to pull this one off. Still, the road continues to rise, but there's nothing. We haven't even seen a rider attack here. There was that tentative move from Carlos Rodriguez, but now everybody here is going to be looking at each other for the final 2 steps at the podium. What a coup this is. 23 seconds now, 1,500 metres to go.
Mas was out the back there. You can see him pulling faces. He's right off the back. And the cohesion disappears from the group behind. They ride through, they look together. There's a shake of the head from Van Wilder. It'll be disbelief maybe when he gets there, but he better believe it, because he is on his way to a very big result. Pogačar, Roglic, the rest. None of them today able to compete with Van Wilder. And there it is. There's a look around. That's that. This race is going the way of 23-year-old Ilan van Wilder, who is a kilometre now from winning his first ever one-day race as a pro bike rider. And what a race. No, it's not World Tour. Yes, it is one of the best start lists you've ever seen. Pogacar's here, as we said. Roglic. There's Carapaz, the Olympic champion, and many more. And talking to the Olympic champ, it's he who makes a move.
Yep, Carapaz goes on the left-hand side, but with 900 metres to go, despite the best efforts of Carapaz, he's not going to bridge that sort of gap here. But Carapaz absolutely flying over the top. Tadej Pogacar is the man trying to bring him back. This is a stinging move by Carapaz.
This is very, very aggressive from Richard Carapaz. The style we're used to from him. With Van Wilder, it's continuing to ride. He's 700 metres from the line, 300 metres further back on the road. Richard Carapaz goes, he moves. The time gap is reducing, I can tell you. It's not updating on the screen yet, but you're looking at Carapaz flying away there from those he's with.
Carapaz is absolutely on the rivet here. He's opened up a gap. It looks like he's going to be able to secure second place here. 500 metres to go. Where is the finish line? That is what this man is going to be saying to himself now.
Over that little lump he goes, around the corner, 300 metres from the line. And Soudal Quick-Step. Forget the fusion. This is what they do best. If they are to disappear, remember this. What a team, what a history. One-day racing, classics, it's what they're all about. And it's the new man they put on the scene who's done it. The first Belgian since Eddy Merckx to win Tre Valli Varesine. And questions off the bike, answers on the road from a team that have done it throughout their history. Soudal Quick-Step take a popular win, and look at the fight for second place. It's Carapaz who does it, and completing the podium will be Alexander Vlasov of Bora Hansgrohe. Fantastically fought, frantic and fraught towards the end, but Ilan van Wilder has pulled off a very special victory, beating the best in the world at their own game, and reminding us, even if it's just for one last time, that this is what they're about.
What a ride that was. The group behind being led home. I think that was Diego Ulissi just leading in the chasers there, but what? Well, you could say, was that opportunistic? But it's just the strength that he powered away from the climb. He thought about it. He's clearly had good legs, just laid off the back of that group. It was a perfectly timed attack, but it wasn't an attack from somebody just rolling the dice. He had the strength to back it up and beat the best riders in the world. He's from Jets, and I tell you what, he rode like one today.
Sensational. This is the moment. You noted at the time, Matt, that O'Connor just could not do it, could not stick with him. He rode in a different way. Little ring, higher cadence. The rest of them were all on the big ring behind. Certainly worked for him. Once he got away, they never looked like close that they were going to get him.
No. Superb, superb individual win. He's going to remember that one for a very, very long time, especially when you look at the riders behind him as well. The Olympic champion, Primoz Roglic there too. And, of course, Tadej Pogacar. That he beat one of all the favourites in that group behind. And he beat them fair and square.
Quite the warm-up for Saturday, isn't it? And remember, there's a certain Mr. Evenepoel to add into the mix there for the same team. Well, all of that talk, all of the speculation, all of the rumours, with the admission of the letter of intent, there's the probability, perhaps, despite the lack of confirmation. But Soudal Quick-Step, for now, are still alive. And I tell you what, their heart is beating, as it always does, Matt, because that's the identity of this team. It always has been. 20-odd years or so, winning one-day races. And, well, if they are to no longer exist, which we hope, I think, against all hope, certainly neutrals, that it will not happen. Well, it's great to see that they're doing what they love to do. Let's say what they've been the best at to the very end.
Exactly. Now that's win number 54 this year for Soudal Quick-Step. Another big year of victories. But the interesting thing about this particular win when you look at that select group of riders out in front, nobody had a teammate, and normally when we see Soudal Quickstep win, it's because they got strength in depth. So Van Wilder did it in a slightly different way. He had to. He had no teammates to rely on. He had to think quickly and use the clear form and ability that he's got, and that's what makes it even more impressive. Okay, yeah, he's ridden with that winning panache, that style, that verve that we've had over the years, but slightly in a different way. Normally there's a numbers game involved, isn't there, because they have that depth. But today, that young man, okay, clearly he was looked after earlier on, but in the end, from that selection, to beat the riders that he beat, he had to do it all on his own.
This was his moment of glory. Quite a couple of months. So much promise when he moved over. There was the chat of, well, is he going to leave DSM? It was at a time when a lot of young riders were leaving. He chose to go to Soudal Quickstep. He found himself at the service of Remco Evenepoel, didn't he, at the Vuelta last year? Didn't go this year. But it's turned out to be a good decision for him personally. Winning the Deutschland Tour, saying he wanted more chances. Today, well, he stepped up. He proved he deserves his own opportunities.
He certainly did. Took it with both hands and really attacked the final part of that course. There was never any doubt what was in his mind, and that was trying to win this bike race. It was the most emphatic attack of the day, with the most commitment and the most power. And that's what it's brought. It's brought him his first, as you said, Rob, first individual road win of his career in a one-day race.
Peace, calm and tranquility returned to Varese after its yearly chaotic race day. And this is how it went today. Starting in Busto Arsizio and heading out to our first 50 kilometres or so of racing before we started the local laps. A fairly frantic start in the end. It ended eventually with 8 riders up the road. Battistella, Rochas, Busato, Serrano, Fetter, Brambilla, Martinelli and Calzoni were there, the latter being one of the standout riders of the whole day. Roglic, Pogacar and the rest watched, chased and tried to get involved when they could. Once Calzoni and Busato was caught, Busato dropped off. Calzoni decided he wanted more with Kelderman and Barguil. Surprisingly, Calzoni would outlast the both of them. Going again, this time following Uran. Getting the better of Uran, but then himself being caught. Van Wilder was in the chase. And the biggest of the boys looked around as he went off the front. They wouldn't see him again. Carapaz would be the next to see him. But that would be after he crossed the finish line in second place. The Olympic champion, the current Ecuadorian champion, making it to second place. Victory on the day going to Soudal Quickstep. A feel-good win after a nervous week or two. And Ilan van Wilder becoming the first Belgian to win Tre Valli Varesine since Eddy Merckx in 1968. Second, as I said, for Carapaz. Third going to Alexander Vlasov. Just ahead of Primož Roglic, who may well be on the verge of announcing he'll be his teammate next year. All calm down by the lakeside. Beautiful day to be down there. Better day today to be on the road watching the cycling, though. What a race around Varese.
It really was. Really enjoyed that one, Rob. Nice to see going there a little bit earlier. Just see how the race unfolded, how it developed, different teams at play, and then ultimately that selection a selection of, in the end, it was about 12 riders, wasn't it? 12 or 13 riders. Nobody had a teammate, and that was the key. The first man to go clear, obviously needed the legs, was indeed Ilan van Wilder. Took that opportunity, anticipated, caused a little bit of confusion behind. I don't think any of them would have expected him to be able to have the legs to do something like that as well. So there definitely was the element of surprise, but to back it up with the pace that he rode that final climb out was impressive.
Classify results see Ilan van Wilder on top ahead of Richard Carapaz, Alex Vlasov in third with Primož Roglic in fourth, Tadej Pogačar following him in fifth, then Wood, Zana, Izaguirre, Rodriguez and O'Connor in the top 10. A Belgian victory for just the fourth time in Tre Valli Varesine. There's been 80-odd Italian wins in the 102 editions. They don't often see foreigners win here. A couple of very famous Slovenian wins in the last few years. But a great victory today for Belgium for the first time since Eddy Merckx in 1968. Oh, we're going to try and hear from the winner in just a moment's time. This is the moment he did it. Combination of being too strong there for O'Connor and the hesitation, Matt, between the biggest of the names behind, just looking across the road at each other.
Yep. Just that little bit there where they were looking, okay, who is it? Well, I'm sure they know Ilan van Wilder is, but there's no real cohesion. It's actually Mike Woods at the front there. But that moment around that corner, when van Wilder looked around, he didn't want anybody for company. Whacked it up a sprocket, dug deep, broke the will of O'Connor, and then took a breath and hit this climb as hard as he could. Carried a lot of momentum, a lot of pace into that corner. He's a lighter rider, so strategically rode the climb to the best of his abilities as well. So laid the power in when it was most at his advantage on the steeper section, and then used that momentum he had the other side to carry off a quite marvellous victory. Carapaz is looking good, though. Does that acceleration? Pogačar couldn't quite close it there, could he, as well? So Carapaz is looking good as we head into in Lombardia as well.
And just another bit of news from Soudal Quick-Step today, heading to the Giro di Lombardia. Remco Evenepoel was out on his bike, wasn't he, in the last 24 hours? And a ride he's entitled Project Lombardia. Riding very quickly for about monument distance around Belgium with over 2,000 metres of climbing. Ready to take on a race that's true to his heart on Saturday. And it's worth reminding you that Remco Evenepoel said he had two objectives for the late season. This is before he announced that he was going to the Vuelta. World Championship time trial and the Giro di Lombardia. So when Evenepoel announces an objective, it tends to be a serious one. So keep your eye on Soudal Quick-Step at the weekend, because they now have a two-pronged attack, you'd say. Maybe three if Monsieur Alaphilippe continues to harm his form as well.
No, definitely. When, as you say, when Remco Evenepoel puts his mind to something, he's odds on to achieve it. And that's what he's shown us over the last few years. He's still a relatively young career. A couple of monuments in the bag. And also when you look back at the significance of Il Lombardia as well, to the way and how that crash a few years ago now affected him, to come back to that race and to put that behind him and to try and win another monument, you wouldn't put it past him. And it does give us another stacked field. All the Italian organisers must be so chuffed to have had such stellar fields leading into Il Lombardia.
Ilan van Wilder ha scelto veramente il momento giusto per partire e per togliergli ogni possibilità. Ha sido muy listo a intuir el momento perfecto para irse.
He chose the perfect
moment. Al final ha sido una carrera muy agresiva, ¿no?
Yeah, it was a really aggressive race.
No había un control como tal de un solo equipo, entonces creo que a falta de 5 vueltas siempre está muy activa la carrera y ha sido selectiva, ¿no? Al final creo que hemos sido un grupo muy pequeño que ha llegado y luego, bueno, pues quien ha ganado ha sido muy listo el momento exacto y muchos nos hemos visto y ha hecho una diferencia que ha podido llegar. Bueno, al final yo estoy muy contento porque vengo de una recuperación muy larga y bueno, la selección de segundo puesto es genial para mí.
Grazie Richard, allora ha detto che è stata una corsa molto dura, molto difficile da controllare, i team non sono riusciti nessuno a imporre la propria autonomia, la propria importanza rispetto alla gara e soprattutto appunto Ilan Van Wilder, come accennavo io, è stato bravissimo a scegliere il momento giusto per partire e per lasciare lì i big che in quel momento si stavano controllando. E adesso intanto aspettiamo appunto anche l'arrivo del vincitore Ilan Van Wilder che fra un attimo mi raggiungerà.
Il vincitore del Gran Premio della Montagna.
The right moment, the right momentum in which the big were controlling each other and you choose the right moment to escape from them.
Yes, actually I just wanted to make tempo and then I had a gap and then I went full gas with also my sport director Bramati turning crazy in the car and saying I have to do a TT until the finish, and I did. I had a lot of mental strength from it. It's difficult weeks for us, so this victory is really for my teammates and for our staff to show we don't agree with all this shit, and we want to continue Soudal Quick Step. We are strong enough, and I hope it will be like this.
Thank you very much indeed. Ilan ha fatto un riferimento preciso anche al fatto di questa fusione di cui si parla moltissimo in questi giorni fra Soudal e Jumbo Visma, e chiaramente non è d'accordo su questa cosa e preferisce che la Soudal vada avanti per la sua strada. Chiaramente ha scelto, l'ho ripetuto, giusto, non pensava di poter arrivare in fondo, però ha insistito ed è riuscito nella sua azione e ha detto soprattutto che l'ha aiutato moltissimo anche Davide Bramati nella sua ammiraglia, gridandogli di andare avanti, di non mollare, di andare fino in fondo. Very unhappy. Thanks, okay. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, Rob, I didn't expect that. I think the first indication of any discontent was when we heard from Alaphilippe yesterday, Julio Alaphilippe, after the race, when he said he was sad. But that was pretty emphatic there. That was a real, unambiguous, clear statement, at least from Ilan Wilder's perspective. And when he reflected that, when he said that there's clearly a lot of riders and staff who are more than unhappy with that situation. So I don't think it's fair to say it's broken rank. He just said, we're not happy with the situation. And we talked about it earlier on. And I can understand that sentiment, and I can understand that frustration.
And I have to say, well, unfortunately, this image is coming from our host broadcasters. Please accept our apologies. The image is coming from our host broadcasters and rather strangely deciding to cut away from the highlights of the women's race. We weren't told we were going to have that, but it was a very nice surprise to see it. In the end, we have to go with what we're being shown on screen. Again, please accept our apologies, but we remind you that it is not coming from our side. I won't spoil the result now. I've just had a chance to check on it. But of course, we're seeing now the result of the men's race that we just saw on the televisions. Third place going to Alex Vlasov. Second there to Richard Carapaz.
Secondo classificato Carapaz.
Former winner of the Giro d'Italia, and a place that's very special to him, remember. Of course, almost won another Giro, didn't he? Hadn't been for Jai Hindley. But here he is, the winner of the Tre Valli Varesine this year. You heard his interview there. And I was just saying, actually, before we got a chance, rather surprisingly, to have a look what had happened in the women's race for a little while, before equally surprisingly it was cut off in front of our eyes. We heard really for the first time the real thoughts of the riders there. And Ilan Van Wilder said he wants this team to carry on. I think neutrals would like this team to carry on.
Yeah, it's going to leave it. If any proposal, if the proposed merger does happen, as he just takes the trophy here, it's going to leave an enormous void in the landscape, in the pro cycling scene. So you can understand his frustration. But what better way to react to that than just to get on with bike racing And I liked his description of Danny Bramati going, no, Benati, should I say, Bramati, should I say, going mad in the team car behind him. And he's taken a famous victory here, and a very well-deserved one as well.
Led Zeppelin playing in the background. Celebration day for Ilan van Wilder. He beats Richard Carapaz and Alexander Vlasov. And it's a massive one-day win for Soudal Quickstep, who are back doing what they do best. And a reminder as we go to Saturday, there's a certain Remco Evenepoel to return to the team for the Giro di Lombardia.
Sottosegretario con delega allo sport Regione Lombardia e i presidenti delle società organizzatrici del Trittico Regione Lombardia, Enrico Biganzoli dello Sport Club Mobili Lissone, Luca Roveda, Unione Sportiva Legnanese.
So today's family photo, but as we know, Roglic, Pogacar and company will all be up there again, I'm sure, fighting for the weekend. And I'm not sure many people would have predicted that none of the two at least would be on the podium today. It shows that this is a highly competitive era, perhaps the best we have ever seen in professional cycling.
I think you're right, Rob. I really do.
It's the Prosecco moment. And Ilan van Wilder wins a one-day race for the first time in his short career for now. He's beaten the Olympic champion. He's beaten Alex Vlasov, as well as Richard Carapaz.